Greek mythology. I am Zeus, the king of gods. Darkness never ends. Yang Qi felt that his soul had gone through countless years, as if an instant was eternity. There was no shape, no object, no color, no smell around, but in the deepest part of his soul, he felt that all of these had changed a little. Four bright lights appeared in front of Yang Qi's eyes, all directions. He saw, in the east, a king with a blue complexion, wearing a golden crown, and on the crown, gems were inlaid like stars in the sky. He sits in the center of the chaos in an invincible posture, with four arms holding a sword, a magic bow, a magic conch, and a magic hammer, and a huge void flower blooms under him. A green branch and leaf suddenly sprouted from his navel, like the first touch of green in the world. This branch blossomed into a lotus flower, and on that lotus flower another god was born. He has a white beard and four arms. He holds scriptures, rosary beads, water jars, and lotus flowers in his hands. As if an instant is eternity, Yang Qi saw these two gods go through countless years in the chaos. Suddenly, a golden egg was born in the universe. It has grown continuously from the first moment of its birth, turning into a pillar of fire that pierces the sky and shines across the entire universe. You and I, who is the most honorable one? A god spoke, and Yang Qi felt that it was not words, but a resonance sound deep in his heart, resounding through the soul. Let's make a bet. The blue-colored king sitting on the lotus said, you and I search for the end of this pillar of fire. Whoever can reach it first will be the most honored and revered. The two gods, one began to search upwards, and the other began to search downwards. They searched for endless years, but they could not reach the end. When they returned to the starting point, another god stepped out of the pillar of fire that pierced the sky. He is gray all over, with a knotted bun, a crescent moon on his head, and a long snake around his neck. Above the forehead is one eye, burning with flames. The four hands hold a trident, an axe, a tambourine, and a stick. From the first moment of his birth, his limbs began to make various weird postures and dance lightly. His appearance is gentle, terrifying, superhuman, three-faced, lingam, and constantly changing. He is the real most honorable god, said the god with white beard. The blue-skinned king bowed his head towards the dancer. Yang Qi's eyes turned to the west. He saw that the land was void and formless, and the face of the deep was dark. He saw the Spirit of God moving over the water. The Spirit of God said, "Let there be light." And so there was light. He saw that God called the light day, and the darkness night, and thus there was an evening. He saw that God separated the air and the water, and God called the sky and the sea, and called the exposed one the earth. He heard that God said, "Let the earth produce green grass, and herbs that bear seeds, and trees that bear fruit, each according to its kind, and the fruit has a seed in it." That's how it happened. He also saw that God made the stars, the birds, the livestock, the reptiles, and the wild animals. Finally, he saw that God created human beings, and God blessed them, saying that they would multiply, fill the earth, and rule the earth. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the air. Yang Qi turned his eyes to the south. He saw nothing but a great flood between heaven and earth. In this flood, there is a God, who is absent and omnipresent, who is unconscious, emotionless, and exists as nothing. After the great flood ravaged this world for countless epochs, his soul turned from nothingness to reality, as if it was there, destined to come here. Facing the raging flood, he whispered his name. His first name is La, and his second name is Pu. He kept saying his name until he reached the billionth real name. When he pronounced his billionth real name, his form appeared. He has golden flesh and silver bones, a human body with the head of an eagle, a round of red sun on top of his head, and a snake wrapped around the red sun. He holds a scepter and a key. The scepter wants to shepherd all living beings in the world, and the key is eternal immortality. Seeing that the flood was boundless and boundless, the king of gods held up the scepter in his hand, and all the water that could be named in the sky, the world, east, south, west, north, up, down, left, and right gathered together, and he gathered the water into a stream. Great river, placed on the ground. The land that lost its water was baked by the scorching sun above the head of the god king and turned into fine-grained sand. So a very wide and turbulent river runs through this land. Only on its banks are fertile oases, and everything else is yellow sand. Yang Shi turned his gaze to the north. This place is not empty and dark. In the endless space, a giant tree stands in this universe. The sun, moon and stars revolve around this giant tree. No words can describe the enormity of this sacred tree. It despises all enormities, because there can no longer be anything greater than it. This huge tree has 3 thick roots. The roots are like the arms of gods, tightly grasping 3 huge springs, as if grasping destiny itself. The ancient well in the first spring has no waves, and there is a pure white swan in the spring water. There are 3 goddesses who live by the spring, singing the praises of fate loudly, and weaving gold, silver and black threads. One end of the thread they weaved flew over the mountain top in the extreme east, and the other end flew in the deep sea in the extreme west, forming golden, silver and black nets. The second spring is choppy, as if it contains unwillingness and the wrath of heaven and earth. Countless black shadows flew from the huge tree to the spring. They were the souls of the dead, with the longing for life and unwillingness to die. The resonance of the soul resounded through the heaven and the earth. From the springs flowed 12 mighty rivers, one of which was the color of quicksilver, flowing backwards over the great trees. Above the spring, a black giant dragon sleeps in the root of the tree. Its size can be compared with the root of the tree. Its blackness is so pure that it absorbs all the light in the world, just like death itself. It is sleeping, and every time it wakes up, it starts to bite the roots of this giant tree. Its greed and terror make the giant tree tremble. The third spring resounds the joy of life, and its power inspires Yang Shi, who is far away in the infinite void. It has life, creation, joy, all the right words in the world, and it cannot be overemphasized. Yang Shi saw that in the middle of the world tree, under the huge canopy, a king was walking forward with a spear. The king has created the sun, moon, stars, sky, and earth, but he still walks on the world tree, because this giant tree existed before he existed. The king cannot feel his own greatness, he feels small in this world. At last he came under the crown of the giant tree, and he stabbed himself in the stomach with a gun. The king hangs himself upside down on the crown of the world tree, letting the blood of the gods drip on the ground. The king completed the first sacrifice in the world, and he sacrificed himself to himself. His blood will give him what he wants. East, south, west, north. The 4 directions have been seen. Yang Shi turned his eyes to the bottom of his soul. In the middle of this boundless space, there is a 5th god's domain. He sees. He felt that his soul was falling rapidly, like a meteor. Yang Shi opened his eyes, and saw a 10,000-meter tall goddess who was embracing him tenderly, full of joy. Beside her stood 2 stone lions. When she spoke, it was as if the earth itself spoke. She wrapped herself in a golden cloth and said softly, "I name you, Zeus." "I'm Zeus?" He just came across, and before Zeus could react, he heard a thunderous sound. "Where is my child? Bring my child up quickly." The voice of anger resounded between heaven and earth. Even though Zeus was born with a divine body, he felt that his liver and gallbladder were about to burst. Zeus looked out the window. Outside the golden palace where he was born, a king piercing the sky and burning with blue and black flames walked over with heavy steps. He is the god king of Olympus, his own father, Cronus. With every step, Zeus felt the tremor deep in his soul. "Sister, he's coming." Above the golden palace dome, a drizzle suddenly fell. Those drizzles fell on the ground, forming a goddess, who came worryingly. Titan's memory was passed down through blood, and Zeus recognized her in an instant. She was dressed in a sea blue robe, and countless black clouds swirled around her non-stop. Thunderclaps sounded from time to time in the black clouds. Every time she took a step, water waves bulged on the ground, and the sound of sea waves resounded. She is one of the 12 Titans, the first goddess of the sea, Thesis. In terms of seniority, she is his mother's younger sister. Another goddess has a benevolent face, and 2 stone lions stand beside her. She hugged Zeus tightly. She is one of the 12 Titan gods, the wife of god King Cronus, her own mother, and the 2nd generation of Mother Rhea. Zeus, who was familiar with the myth, understood that his mother was saving himself. That's because of the curse of the Titans. The god king of Olympus will be overthrown by his own son. Therefore, Cronus, the current god king of Olympus, will swallow all his children. Zeus has just been born, he will definitely come and devour Zeus. Are you ready, Tethys? Sure, Rhea, but do you really want to do this? That's all I can do. How can I have the heart to let my child be swallowed by his cruel father as soon as he is born? Just like the 3 sisters and 2 brothers in front of him, I can't bear it anymore, I can't bear it anymore. Ray's voice became heavier. Isn't it because of that terrible curse, the God King, who will eventually be overthrown by his son, just like, Tethys whispered. Hearing the word, curse, Ray's expression sank. Please don't say such terrible words again. The 2 goddesses fell into silence, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the empty room, getting closer. He's coming soon. Tethys broke the silence with a solemn expression on his face. Rhea, now is the time to make a decision. If you want to save your child, now is the time. Rhea lowered her head and looked at Zeus, who was still in his infancy. Her eyes were gentle and firm. I handed him over to you, and I hope you can raise him up and save his brother and sister. Rhea took off the golden cotton cloth that wrapped Zeus tightly with a ball of sackcloth, and handed it to Theseus. She wrapped the stone lion beside her with the piece of golden cotton cloth and held it tightly in her arms, pretending to be the newborn Zeus. Tesses, let's go. Rhea, take care. In Theseus's arms, Zeus heard the sound of the sea's waves. He felt that Theseus evaporated like rain on the earth and disappeared into this golden palace, and it also fell like rain from the sky and sank into the sea. Under the protection of the sea goddess, Zeus sank into the deep sea and headed for an unknown destination. He looked back at the golden palace that towered into the sky and stood on the mountain. A king with a scythe in his hand, wings growing from his ribs, and burning blue and black flames all over his body stepped into the palace. No, Kronos, that's your child, your flesh and blood. You've devoured 5 children, isn't that enough? This is the arrangement of fate. How can I overthrow my own divine court? For the eternal rule of this continent, give him to me. There was thunder and heavy rain. In the Thunder movie, Zeus saw Cronus, the 2nd-generation god king, Black Sun, the most noble of the 12 Titan gods, his father, holding up the golden clothed the wrapped baby, was swallowed. The wild laughter of his father Cronus and the cry of his mother Rhea resounded on the top of Mount Olympus. It should have been me who was swallowed, and I escaped. Theseus, holding Zeus in his arms, traveled rapidly through the ocean, and all the water in the world flowed backward. They traveled through the vast ocean for 9 days and 9 nights, until Mount Olympus was about to disappear in the sky. Zeus, take a look. Theseus's voice was like the roar of the ocean. In the ocean, she held up the newborn baby, facing the direction of Mount Olympus. Zeus, according to the prophecy, you are the child of destiny, the 3rd-generation king who overthrew your father and took charge of the Olympus court. Look at your holy mountain, palace and throne. It belongs to you. Theseus held up Zeus. If it is as predicted by fate, please send down the thunderbolt from the sky. Let the thunderbolt shake the sea, because God King born world. The sky moved faintly, and then golden lightning rained down. 100,000 lightning bolts shone on the dark sea, and the thunderclap vibrated with a divine voice, which was a tribute and eulogy to himself. Zeus saw thousands of sirens singing out to sea in the distance, praising his name, flying birds circling around him, and ethereal Kagura playing heaven and earth. That's right. You are the child of destiny, Zeus. Zeus felt Theseus hug him tighter. He saw Tethys weeping, crystal tears dripping from the corners of her eyes like bright pearls. I traveled to the world of Greek mythology. Zeus realized it in his heart. I am the 6th child of Cronus, the god king. The god of the gods, the king of kings, in charge of the sky and the earth, the guardian of the oath, the controller of the thunder, the 3rd generation of the god king, the eternal god king, Zeus. In the far west of Mount Olympus, in the vast ocean, is Sea God Island. There are 2 huge stone statues standing on Poseidon Island. They are the statues of Oceanus, the god of the ocean, and Thetis, the goddess of the sea. These 2 statues were not carved by living beings, but were formed naturally by the continuous erosion of waves hitting the mountain peaks. Because they control the sea is their disciple. Sea God Island was filled with divine power, condensing into colorful beams of light, piercing the sky. This beam of light constantly changes shape. Sometimes it is a lion, sometimes it is a swan, and sometimes it is thunder. A beautiful young man with a healthy body and an elegant and dignified appearance is standing in the beam of light. His hair was as golden as lightning. He is 17-year-old Zeus. Zeus opened his eyes and clenched his fists. His divine body creaked, making the sound of thunder and lightning. My god position has reached the 7th rank of the middle god. I don't know when I will reach the peak of the middle god. Zeus is the child of god King Cronus and Earth Mother Rhea. He is a pure-blooded titan with extremely noble blood. He was born with the power of a middle god. In the past 17 years, Zeus relied on the titan mysteries inherited in the memory of his blood, and continued to practice, and he had reached the 7th rank of the median god. Angels, demigods, lower gods, middle gods, upper gods, main gods, god kings, primitive gods, and supreme gods. Each god rank is divided into 1 to 9 ranks. But it's been 17 years since I traveled to this world. Why hasn't Goldfinger been opened yet? Zeus had before his eyes a dim symbol that had been present since his birth. During these 17 years, no matter how Zeus tried, he could not wake it up. Zeus, have you finished training? A crisp sound came, and Zeus looked up and saw a red cuckoo standing on a palm tree in the distance. It flew slowly and landed on Zeus's shoulder, staring at Zeus curiously with wide open eyes. Matey, are you practicing your transformation magic again? Yes. The cuckoo chirped, flew a few times in the sky, and finally landed on the ground, turning into a beautiful girl. She wore a red robe, black hair, a rose gold cloak, a golden forehead, and a string of dark blue pearls around her neck. With a gentle face and as calm as water, he held an ancient scripture in his hand. Zeus, who is familiar with mythology, of course knows that what she holds in her hand is the artifact, Book of Wisdom, which records all the knowledge in the world and will give the owner endless wisdom. His adoptive parents, the ocean god Oceanus and the sea goddess Thesis, conceived a total of 3,000 daughters of the sea. The girl in front of her was the eldest daughter among the 3,000 daughters of the sea, Métis, the goddess of wisdom. According to historical records, she was also her first wife. Métis has a calm personality, a gentle and beautiful face, exuding the brilliance of a goddess. Zeus looked at her and couldn't help being a little crazy. Métis is never recorded in history for her beauty, but for her wisdom. But this goddess, who is not famous for her beauty, is so radiant and charming. The world-famous Hera, the goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, and her future daughter Athena may make the gods jealous. The beautiful Helen, how breathtakingly beautiful should it be? Zeus, your clothes are wet, and there is mud on your shoes. You are the future god king. How can you do this? Let me clean it up for you. Métis stepped forward, picked up the pearl necklace around his neck, bit it, and recited the spell silently, and Zeus's clothes became fresh and dry in an instant. She lowered her body again, stretched out her white to transparent fingers, and wiped off the dust on Zeus' shoes. Métis liked Zeus in his heart. His majestic body, heroic face, and hair as brilliant as golden thunder. When Métis is free, he always sneaks out of the palace, wanting to come and see Zeus, but when he sees Zeus, he doesn't know what to say. Wisdom also seems to have lost its effect at this moment. So she often came out to help Zeus clean up his clothes, or the two sat on the beach, quietly watching the sea at night and the sea at dawn. Métis raised her head and saw that Zeus was staring at her closely. Her heart jumped up and down. The heartbeat made her flustered, but she also enjoyed it very much. What's the matter, Zeus? Zeus was just fascinated by Métis' beauty before, but what stunned him now was that he found the dim symbol in front of him lit up. Ignoring Métis, Zeus focused his mind on the shining symbol. In an instant, 2 lines of small characters appeared in front of his eyes. 1. Pursue Métis and make her your first wife. Reward: 9 drops of primordial god blood, 10 raw stones of divine power. 2. Keep a distance from Métis. Reward: great sword. The second option is naturally not considered. Métis was supposed to be the wife of Zeus. Moreover, she will give birth to one of the future Olympus' 12 main gods, the goddess of war, the goddess of wisdom, the first star, the guardian of Athens, Athena. What really surprised Zeus was the reward of option 1, the blood of the original gods. The blood of Zeus is a pure titan, which is the most noble blood in this world, because he is the son of the god King Cronus and the mother Rhea. They are all one of the 12 titans. But the original god lineage surpassed his parents. Zeus's parents, god king Cronus and earth mother Rhea, are the children of the first-generation god king Uranus and the first-generation earth mother Gaia. This is equivalent to that Zeus can surpass his father and obtain the same original god blood as his grandfather Uranus. Further up, there is only the chaos god who was born from the chaos and nothingness when the world was first created. With the thought, Zeus made a choice. It's the first time to choose reward distribution. Reward. Shenlei Transformation Mystery. You can use the power of thunder to transform into various forms. Reward 10 God Origin Stones. Reward the Mithril Greatsword. Reward the Mithril Great Bow. The holy water that rewards the undead, the fountain of life. Zeus raised his head, looked at Métis whose face was a little red, and whose heart was pounding, and said seriously, "Métis, be my wife." It seemed that he had been waiting for this moment for a lifetime, but when Zeus said it directly, Métis was a little stunned. Her clever mind seemed to be useless at the moment. You want to pursue me? You. Métis blushed, holding the scroll, and retreated step by step. Why, you don't want to? No, I would. But. Métis watched Zeus approaching step by step, his heart pounding. She was happy, but panicked. Métis, don't you like Zeus too? Promise him? As long as you promise him, you can be with him forever. A voice circulated in Métis' heart, but Métis just couldn't open his mouth. Oh, me, I like it too. Métis blushed. She stammered out a few words, then stomped her feet suddenly, turned into a red lark, and flew into the sky. Damn. I really can't say it. Let's run first. Métis' heart was pounding. Want to run? Seeing Zeus, of course he wouldn't just let Métis go. He was born to control the power of thunder, and he has just obtained the profound art of transforming from thunder, and his divine power far surpasses that of Métis. All over the sky, the power of the shining thunder, add to my god, because I am the master of thunder. Zeus' golden hair fluttered, pointing to the sky with one hand. The originally clear sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds, and suddenly there was a loud thunder. In the thunder, Zeus transformed into a majestic falcon and flew straight into the sky. What happened? Métis, who was running away with her head buried, suddenly found that the sky had suddenly turned black, and the sound of thunder was loud, and the violent thunder shook her mind. Suddenly there was a gust of bad wind, and Métis turned his head to see that it was a golden falcon. Not good. The red feathers on Métis' tail exploded like a red cloud in the night sky. She recovered her body, her expression was flustered, her hair was disheveled. Seeing the golden falcon getting closer, she suddenly looked solemn. Gritting his teeth, he grabbed the pearl necklace on his neck and prayed in a low voice. Suddenly, the water gurgled, and a mist evaporated from the ocean, condensed into a huge bow, and fell into the hands of Métis. Métis' hair was fluttering in the cold ocean wind, and his red robe was fluttering in the sea wind. The waves on the ocean were rolling, and the sea rose up without any wind, turning into a huge arrow of water and flying to the bowstring of Métis. She holds a huge bow and aims at the falcon. Zeus, I am the eldest daughter of the ocean god. If you want to marry me, show some real skills. Métis looked at the healthy falcon flying in the sky, and his heart was in a state of confusion. She opened her bow like a full moon, and the water arrow burst out a tide of divine power visible to the naked eye, sweeping away in all directions. Get down for me. Métis gritted her teeth, not knowing how much force the arrow would use. She was afraid of hurting Zeus, and she was afraid that Zeus would underestimate her due to lack of divine power. Boom! The arrow of water exploded with shocking power and struck towards Zeus. What a powerful divine power! Zeus, who swooped down in the air, was shocked. Fortunately, she is the eldest daughter among the 3,000 sea gods' daughters, and her divine power is no less than the 6th rank of the Median god. In terms of blood, Métis is her cousin, and her parents, like Zeus's, are the 12 ancient titans. But his parents are God King and God Queen, and his blood is more pure, and his divine power has reached the 7th rank of Median god. Métis, you promised to be my wife just now. Why did you run away again? Then when I catch you, you must keep your promise. Thunder. The huge falcon spread its wings in the air, and the lightning condensed into golden discs under his wings. In an instant, the divine body of Zeus appeared, and the lightning condensed into a golden shield, which Zeus held in his hand. Boom! Zeus caught the arrow with his shield, and the water arrow shattered into a torrential rain, falling from the sky. Zeus was unscathed, his golden hair fluttered in the air, his expression was majestic, and the spirit of a fierce god-king rushed towards his face. Looking at the majestic Zeus in the air, Métis gasped. She felt regretful as soon as she made a move, fearing that her divine power would seriously injure Zeus, but unexpectedly he was unscathed. Métis was ashamed and angry. She wanted to turn around and run, but also wanted to throw herself into Zeus' arms immediately. Now she is not a goddess, but a distraught daughter of the sea. In an instant, countless thoughts floated through his mind. Métis gritted her teeth. Shield? Zeus, do you dare to take my shot? Her red robe was buzzing in the air, and she tore off the pearl necklace from her neck and held it in her hands. All of a sudden, there was no wind and no waves in the ocean, and the ocean behind Métis, as if obeying her order, raised a huge wave of 10,000 meters high. The ocean surrounding the entire sea god island roared like a beast, and the 10,000-meter high waves were like the sky, forming a huge water curtain, enveloping the entire sea god island. A pure blue gun appeared in the hands of Métis, which was condensed from pure ocean power. Métis slowly landed on the ground in the air. She took a step forward, and Ru Diang also took a step forward. The pure blue spear in her hand let out a howling roar, trembling unceasingly, as if it had life and wanted to break free from Métis' hand. Divine blood oozes from her hand, merging into the pure blue spear. Zeus, let you experience the divine power of the daughter of the ocean, hey! Métis stepped forward, and the sharp spear charged at Zeus with a soaring howl. The will of the gods. Métis is indeed a genius. She has already grasped the will of the gods. The meaning of the gods is that when the gods fight, they burst out the power of the gods they command. Métis is the goddess of the ocean, and her pure blue gun bursts out the vastness, ruthlessness and mystery of the ocean. Zeus' face darkened, and a terrifying power erupted all over his body. Lightning was born out of thin air, enveloping Zeus, and he pointed to the sky. The power of thunder. The sky that was originally covered with dark clouds was even worse at this moment, and suddenly countless bolts of lightning struck down from the sky, directly hitting the water curtain that enveloped Sea God Island. Lightning is as fast as rain, and the world it shines on is golden. Every time the lightning hit the water curtain, Métis' heart trembled. She couldn't help but feel her feet go limp. Her whole body was like an electric shock, and she couldn't help but collapsed on the ground. Boom! Finally, the huge water curtain covering the island could no longer bear the blow of lightning, and suddenly collapsed. The seawater fell, the sky reappeared, and the sky was full of dark clouds. Countless bolts of lightning condensed into a giant net, directly facing the pure blue gun. Boom! The pure blue spear collapsed instantly, shattering into countless blue spots of light, which fluttered down like dust. The thunder ceased, and so did the sea tide. There seemed to be no sound between heaven and earth, and it was pitch black. Only countless points of light shining with blue light descended from the sky, and finally fell into the sea. The dark clouds gradually receded and the sky became bright again. Under the sun, there was a thin drizzle, reflecting a colorful rainbow. Métis sat slumped on the ground. Her clothes were soaked by the drizzle, her hair was disheveled, her skin was as white as transparent, and her beautiful red lips looked at Zeus with a smile. Zeus fell to the ground and picked up Métis. Métis was unexpectedly light, almost weightless. Métis, who was held in his arms, looked at Zeus with a smile. Zeus, I agree. I will be your wife. Suddenly, Métis turned into a ball of clear water, enveloping Zeus. Zeus woke up from his deep sleep, feeling his bones cracking. Every pore of the body is full of comfort. Métis turned into a ball of water yesterday, wrapping his whole body tightly. The wonderful taste is indescribable. Zeus found his clothes dry and crisp, which Métis had obviously cleaned for him. There is also a transparent and smooth water polo in the hand. This is god dew, the food of the gods, and it was obviously left for him by Métis. But Métis didn't know where he went. Zeus swallowed the dew, sweet and refreshing. He looked at the tiny mark in front of him. The task has been completed. The reward has been issued. The reward is 9 drops of the blood of the original gods and the source stone of divine power. Zeus took a drop of primordial god blood from his own thundercloud. Zeus was born with the divine power to control thunder, so he usually stores items in his thundercloud. This is a huge drop of blood, several meters long, dark red in color, with countless complicated lines flowing on the blood, bursting out an ancient and mysterious atmosphere, as if the sound of the creation of heaven and earth echoed in my ears. The strong ancient divine power was as thick as a substance, surging and bursting out around the blood, condensed into pure white beads around the blood, and fell with a ding-dong. This is the blood of the ancient gods. Contains the power of the ancient gods. With it, my bloodline of the gods can surpass my father and mother and become a greater existence. Zeus's father is the current god king, Cronus, the dark god king, and his mother is the second-generation mother Rhea. In terms of blood, he is the best of the third generation of gods in the world. But he couldn't surpass his parents, and his brothers and sisters swallowed by his father also had the same noble blood. Zeus saw it hot, and he summoned a thundercloud, entered it, and rose into the sky. From the outside, there is no flaw at all. Then Zeus stepped into the huge blood. What a powerful divine power! In the blood is a huge space burning with blue and black flames, and a 1,000,000-meter-long blue-black pillar of fire shoots straight into the sky. That savage, ancient, and great divine power surged towards him like a flood. This power contained death and rebirth, creation and destruction, light and darkness, as if all the dualistic powers in the world had merged into his divine body. The violent and chaotic torrent of energy almost pulverized Zeus, as if driving a small boat in a stormy ocean. This power is stronger than I imagined. No way. Zeus calmed down and concentrated on absorbing this violent energy. Zeus closed his eyes and concentrated. He felt 100,000 golden lightning bolts in his divine body. This is the source of his divine power, and the blue-black flames and energy torrents are constantly impacting and merging into his golden lightning, which gradually turns black. Zeus feels that his lightning has become more violent, 10 times more powerful than forward. After my bloodline transforms into a primitive god, can my divine power be 10 times stronger? Just as Zeus was concentrating on cultivation, he felt a huge figure in front of him. This huge black figure covered the entire space, as if it were as huge as the universe itself. Exhausting all the words, it is impossible to describe its hugeness. This black figure suddenly covered the entire space, and Zeus felt that there was a familiar aura about it. This is my ancestor. The Titan's blood in Zeus' body was boiling, and the blood in his body clearly told him, this is his ancestor. The huge god in front of me is the first generation of Earth Mother, Gaia. Gaia is the super primitive god, the mother of all gods, the godhead incarnation of the earth, and the original power to create life. Zeus saw that Gaia's huge black body began to condense into a black stone, and flowers and grass began to grow on the stone. A towering giant tree grew from her head, and her body turned into a huge rainbow, with a pair of wings condensed by light spreading out from behind. Gaia held a pure white bottle in her hand, which was born from nature. When Zeus saw the bottle, he couldn't help being shocked. He felt the majestic and boundless breath of life condensed in the pure white bottle. The bottle of life contains the seed of all things and the fountain of life. Gaia held up the bottle of life, and the seed of all things and the fountain of life flowed out of it. Suddenly, the earth glowed with vitality, and the previously desolate and dead universe began to appear the first touch of green. In this chaos, the blue-black flame and energy were originally the only masters. They seem to feel that there is no longer their own living space, so they start to accumulate, like a group of demons, roaring and rushing towards Gaia. They pierced Gaia's body like a sharp sword, but Gaia remained expressionless, and the wound healed instantly. This incomparably violent energy pierced Gaia's body countless times, and each time they pierced, their strength became smaller and smaller, until finally, they were all absorbed into Gaia's body. What kind of divine power is this? Zeus trembled in his heart. He could only absorb a little bit of those blue-black flames and energy, and his divine body couldn't hold on to explode, but Gaia could absorb them all into his body. She held out a finger and pointed to the sky. No, to be precise, in the world at this moment, there is only the earth, but no sky, and there is no distinction between up, down, left, and right. But on Gaia's fingertips, the bluish-black flame and energy burst out. This is the first roar between heaven and earth, A god was born on Gaia's finger. He is the agglomeration of blue-black flame and energy, the god of the sky, the first generation of God-King, Uranus. Grandfather, Zeus looked at the god born from Gaia's fingertips and murmured. In terms of seniority, Uranus and Gaia are his grandfather and grandmother. They gave birth to Cronus and Rhea. Cronus married Rhea and gave birth to himself. Gaia is the god of the earth, and Uranus is the god of the sky. However, the sky and the earth were not separated after birth, but were tightly bonded together. Uranus and Gaia are tightly superimposed, and each piece of land has a piece of sky glued to it. A giant tree descended from the sky, standing deep on the ground. Uranus was combined with Gaia at the beginning of its birth, and Zeus saw a cyclops as tall as a mountain and a 100-armed giant with 100 arms born from Gaia. They were the first children of Uranus and Gaia. Immediately afterwards, the 12 titans were born one after another. Zeus saw his mother Rhea, and also saw his adoptive parents, the ocean god Oceanus and the sea goddess Thesis. Finally, the youngest child of the 12 titans, his father Cronus, was also born. Curse, Zeus muttered to himself. This is a curse engraved in the blood of the Titan god race, that is, the son will overthrow the father and establish a new generation of gods. In the dark, Uranus, the god of the sky, also understood this curse. He did not allow his children to be born, and the 12 titans, Cyclops, and 100-armed giants were forced to stay in Gaia's body. Zeus watched all this quietly in this void. However, he did not forget to absorb some of the blue-black flames and energy left in this space. Every ounce and every drop of them was purifying his blood and improving his divine power. Zeus felt that he already had 10 times the divine power he had before. Finally one day, Ouranos, the god of the sky, is sleeping. His wife, Earth Mother Gaia, spoke. She made a sound, as if the earth itself spoke. The Cyclops, the 100-armed giant, my children. I can't take it anymore, she said. She said, go assassinate your father and build your own gods. My brave children, which of you dares to assassinate your father and be free? Gaia is the earth itself. This land that was originally extremely flat began to shake, and huge mountains and abysses were born in this shaking. In the middle of the earth, above the highest mountain range, a pure black boulder appeared. The boulder absorbed all light, and all those around it lost their shadows. Countless arms stretched out from the ground, and they molded the boulder into a sharp sickle. The sickle was burning with blue-black flames, and divine power burst out violently from the sickle, straight into the sky, and the terrifying roar of divine power resounded through the universe. Gaia held up the black sickle high. This is the sickle of the abyss. Which of you would dare to pick up this sickle to assassinate your father? Children of Gaia, silent. Cyclops, do you dare? Gaia's majestic eyes stared at the Cyclops, who closed his eyes in horror. 100-armed giant, do you dare? Gaia turned her head and stared at the 100-armed giant. The 100-armed giant covered his face with his arms in a panic, not daring to look at Gaia. Disappointment flashed in Gaia's eyes, and she turned to the 12 titans again. 12 titans, my children, do you dare? Zeus saw the ocean god Oceanus and the sea goddess Thesis, and they bowed their heads together. Zeus saw his mother, Rhea, hugging 2 stone lions, huddled in a corner, not making a sound. Zeus saw another goddess with a stern look and an astonishingly beautiful appearance. She leaned against the wall, staring at the silver dagger in her hand, silent. Another goddess with a pale complexion, long eyes and long white hair, and a petite body like a girl, knelt on the ground and carved words on the ground with her fingers, surrounded by countless silvery white light spots. Gaia didn't seem to hear it at all. There is also a dark titan god who seems to be made up of shadows. He holds the hand of a goddess who radiates light and is silent. All the titans fell silent. My children, you. Gaia's eyes dimmed, revealing a trace of despair. I come. Suddenly, a quiet voice sounded. Everyone stared at him in surprise. He was the youngest of the 12 titans, Cronus. Cronus was still a teenager. His whole body was burning with blue-black flames that would never stop. He stepped forward and caught the sickle in his mother's hand. Cronus's eyes were extremely determined. He opened his mouth, and his voice suddenly changed from a clear and clear boyish voice to an extremely forceful voice, as if he had grown up in an instant. Cronus gripped the sickle tightly in his hand. I already know the curse rooted in the Titans. Mother, I follow your teachings. I have come to kill my father and set you free. I will kill my father, and I will build a new generation of gods. I'm here to kill my father, let this curse begin. As soon as the words fell, the scythe in Kronos' hand erupted into a shocking black flame, straight into the sky. The violent breath runs through the space between the heaven and the earth, exuding a monstrous killing intent. The blue-black flames rushing towards the sky unexpectedly condensed into a crown, which descended from the sky and landed on top of Kronos' head. Suddenly, the sky and the earth roared, as if countless creatures were congratulating the birth of the new god and praising the coming of the god king. The moment the crown fell, Kronos' body began to swell. Suddenly, it was 1,000,000 meters high. The blue-black flames burning all over his body seemed to swallow the earth. Everyone was terrified. Even Gaia had to close her eyes. Who disturbed my sleep and woke me up from my dreams? A majestic and indifferent voice resounded between the heavens and the earth. Uranus woke up from his deep sleep. He found that his son Cronus had grown as tall as himself. Seeing the sickle in his hand, it burns with fierce flames, as hot as death itself. My son, are you going to kill your father? Uranus's angry voice resounded through the heavens and the earth. Just as Gaia, the Earth Mother, is the earth itself, Uranus, the sky god, is the sky itself. A corner of the sky fell off, condensed a huge sword, and slashed at Cronus heavily. Cronus, I'll stop it. Go and cut off the tree of life that connects the sky and the earth. Gaia roared, and suddenly, a huge stone wall rose from the ground. The stone wall was like a mountain peak, blocking Uranus's giant sword. Well, Gaia screamed in pain, and the earth kept trembling. Quick! Kronos' huge body took a step, spanned 1,000,000 meters, and came to the tree of life. This tree of life connects the sky and the earth, and is the source of life for Uranus. The sickle in Kronos' hand ignited flames, and he cut off the tree of life with a single blow. The tree of life let out a scream and flew into the distance. At the moment when the tree of life was cut off, the severe pain caused the spirit of Uranus to fly into the sky. He broke away from the earth and flew high above the earth, never to fall again. He truly became the sky, and since then, the sky and the earth have been separated. The tree of life flew to the distance, and its sap dripped on the earth. 3 goddesses were born from it. One of them had a snake head, a long tongue, and an iron chain. A man with wings, a long snake in his hair, and a whip in his hand. One of them has a head and a snake tail, with blood-red eyes, and holds a poisonous whip. They are the Furies. The tree of life flew in the air for 12 days, and its juice kept falling on the ground, and countless giant spirits with dragon tails were born from it. In the end, the tree of life fell into the ocean, where it melted and countless white foams floated up. In the bubble, a goddess is born. Any man in the world who sees her will fall into endless love and spend his whole life chasing after her. She will easily promise love to mortals, but she will also easily abandon mortals, and the abandoned man will commit suicide in pain. Her beauty has made countless gods excited and even crazy, as if the great magic power of love has condensed into an entity and shaped this god. She is the most beautiful goddess, Aphrodite. Aphrodite was born out of white foam. At the moment of her birth, as if to celebrate, white daisies bloomed on Mount Olympus thousands of miles away. Aphrodite opened her beautiful eyes, surrounded by countless dolphins. The dolphins brought her ashore. On the shore, seeing her beautiful face, countless nymphs couldn't help closing their eyes, covering their faces in shame, never wanting to let all living beings see their ugly face again. Every time Aphrodite took a step, the flowers covered the petals with leaves, like a mimosa. Of course, Zeus also saw her beauty. Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, you have a more famous name. Venus. Your appearance really lives up to your reputation. No wonder countless mortal men and gods will be crazy about it in future generations. I will. Zeus stared at Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. Suddenly, Zeus woke up. He was deep in his own thundercloud, and beneath him was the sea god island where he had lived for 17 years. The blood of the ancient gods had been completely absorbed, and Zeus felt that the divine power in his body had reached a certain limit. There are still 8 drops of the same divine blood, which cannot be absorbed for the time being. It seems that when absorbing the blood of the ancient god just now, the soul of the god traveled to the ancient times. Zeus saw his father Cronus kill his father, overthrew the rule of Uranus, and established his own court. It also saw the birth of Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, and the three goddesses of revenge, and the dragon-tailed genie born from the sap of the tree of life. Zeus knew that in the records, the dragon-tailed genie would finally launch a war against Olympus in an attempt to overthrow his own rule. That's right, own rule. Zeus was agitated in his heart. He saw his father killing his father. According to the prophecy, Zeus would also kill his father Cronus and establish his own court. Father Cronus swallowed his brothers and sisters, including his future wife, Hera. There are also Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Hades, the god of the underworld. Zeus must free them. Moreover, Cronus was too afraid of the curse, and only his wife Rhea and several other titans were in his court. Therefore, there are still many things in heaven and earth that are not governed by gods and are in chaos. For example, Cronus has established his gods for thousands of years, but until now he has not created humans. Sooner or later, I will overthrow my father's rule and establish my own divine court. Time is ticking. Zeus remembered that when his soul traveled through, he saw the quartet god realm. In this universe, they are not the only gods. There is a god system in the east, west, north, south, and 4 directions, and they will face each other to decide who will rule this universe. Zeus stood up, his hands rattled, and countless black lightning burst out from his palm. Black lightning. Zeus closed his eyes and looked at himself. He saw 150,000 black lightning roaring in his body. Originally, there were only 100,000 golden lightning bolts, which were the source of his divine power. After absorbing the blood of the ancient gods and improving his bloodline, his source of divine power also evolved. Zeus took out the giant mithril sword, black lightning surrounded the sword, and crackling thunder burst out. He jumped up, held a huge sword, and stabbed towards the sea. Boom! Huge waves rose from the sea, several kilometers high. The black lightning surged, and in an instant, thick fog filled the air. In an instant, the seawater was transpired into air by the black lightning. And Zeus only used 1/10 of his strength. My rank. From the 7th rank of the middle god directly to the 9th rank, a jump of 2 ranks. Moreover, I already have some blood of the ancient gods. At the same rank, my strength will be even better. The strength surged. At this moment, a red-tailed cuckoo flew from a distance and landed on Zeus's shoulder. She transformed into a human form, Métis in a red robe with a golden forehead tied around her head. She smiled all over her face, and when she saw Zeus, her face was a little red. Métis, why are you here? Zeus grabbed Métis' hand. Ah, Zeus, you. Métis instantly felt the divine power of Zeus. This divine power was different from what she was familiar with before. It became deeper, more majestic, and darker and more violent. This change made Métis a little flustered. She didn't know why her husband had such a huge change. However, how to change is also her husband Zeus. Zeus, my parents have something to ask you. You go to the sea god temple, I will go with you. Are you going to meet your parents to propose? Zeus smiled. No, there are other things. Métis looked slightly worried. It seems that there is bad news. Hey sister, what are you playing with? A crisp voice interrupted their conversation. A barefoot girl in green clothes ran over. Her appearance was only in her teens, but in fact she had been born hundreds of years ago. She was the only one who came, but she was followed by white deer, unicorns, Pegasus, and butterflies and dragonflies all over the sky chasing her, as if she was a flower, luring these beautiful insects. Hey, she stopped, opened her big beautiful eyes, and said crisply, Zeus, what are you playing with sister? I want to play too. She is the sister of Métis, the youngest of the 3,000 daughters of the sea, Eurynome, conceived by the ocean god Oceanus and the sea goddess Thesis. Métis was the eldest of 3,000 daughters, and Eurynome the youngest. The two of them are also the most favorite children of the sea god couple. Compared with her sister, she is more innocent, and is most popular with animals on land and fish in the sea. Zeus saw that when her bare feet stepped on the ground, green shoots sprouted from the ground. Although she is still very small, in the future, wherever she goes, there will be lush vegetation and fragrant flowers. In the future, she will be the idyllic goddess. My third wife, Eurynome. Zeus looked at the ignorant Eurynome with a smile, thinking in his heart. Eurynome looked at her sister, pouted her lips, and stared at Zeus. Zeus. Why is my sister blushing? Did you bully her? No, Eurynome, don't talk nonsense, we are fine. My sister is going to marry Zeus, Métis said with a smile. Oh, Eurynome was innocent and didn't know anything about marriage. Marry him? You guys want to get married? Is it fun to get married? I want to get married too. Eurynome, getting married is a big deal, and it cannot be done casually. Sister, it's not over yet. I just made a marriage contract with Zeus. Oh. Eurynome's big eyes blinked suddenly, and his heart suddenly moved. Mom said, according to the prophecy, I will marry the big snake in the sea. HMPH, I don't like the sea, it's too boring. Eurynome stepped on the sand with her little feet, and she kicked away a shell. My mother said that she used shells to calculate, and after hundreds of years, a big snake will come to marry me. Suddenly Eurynome turned her eyes to Zeus, and she saw Zeus's stalwart body, handsome face, and golden hair, and his body was shining with lightning and thunder. An unknown feeling suddenly came to my heart. Eurynome suddenly felt something ringing in her heart, but she didn't know what it was. Okay, Eurynome, our parents told us to go to the sea god temple to find them. You can go together. Oh. Eurynome dragged his head and followed behind the two. She looked at her sister holding Zeus's hand, feeling a little uncomfortable. The sea god temple is located in the center of the sea god island. The whole body is made of huge multicolored corals with bright colors. It is huge because the 3,000 daughters of the ocean god gather here every morning and dusk to eat and drink the dew of the gods. Zeus held Métis' hand, and heard the laughter and joyful singing of the girls from a distance. The sound of water was gurgling, and in the main hall, there was not a solid ground, but a grand blue fountain, sparkling and crystal clear. Countless girls are playing in it. Although he didn't respect ocean god enough, Zeus always called this palace, big swimming pool, in his heart. Zeus, Métis, and Eurynome walked on the water and reached the end of the hall, where there was a throne carved from sapphire and coral, where Oceanus, the god of the ocean, and Thetis, the goddess of the sea, sat. Zeus. You're here. Tethys said softly. Tethys was wearing a dark blue robe, with countless black clouds floating all over his body. Oceanus has white hair, a crown on his head, and a green scepter in his hand. All 5 of his fingers are sea snakes. Zeus. Oceanos cut straight to the point. A few days ago, a group of gargoyles flew over my island. They were entrenched on a nearby desert island, with blue-black flames burning in their eyes and huge wings. They can set off a 1,000-meter-high storm on the ocean. You should know that they are the messengers of the god king. The god king Cronus is always burning with blue-black flames, and his servants also have this feature. It's also the sentinel of the god king. Zeus nodded. That's right, Oceanos said. The king of gods is getting more and more suspicious. The gargoyles he sent have covered the entire continent, sea and islands of Olympus. On the throne on the top of the mountain, everything in the world is being watched all the time. Zeus, Oceanos said in a low voice, if you are discovered by your father, you will face the fate of destruction. I use my divine power to make the seawater create phantoms on my island all the time. I'm sure these stupid gargoyles haven't spotted you yet, but you'll have to be more careful from now on. Don't let them spot you. Drop. 2 lines of words suddenly floated in front of Zeus' eyes. Option 1. Stay on Sea God Island and practice silently. Reward. 4 thunderbolts. The Bell of Awakening. Option 2. Go to the Gargoyle Island and clear the gargoyles. Reward. Deep Sea Sapphire. This, Zeus originally planned to hang on first, grow up, and take him away in one wave. Although I am the next generation of God King, but being stared at by the current God King, I may be discovered at any time, and it will be uncomfortable to be swallowed. Moreover, this reward is completely forcing myself to get up. The Deep Sea Sapphire of Option 2 is a gemstone that allows the holder to breathe underwater freely. It is a rare treasure for mortals, but for Zeus, it is simply useless garbage. And Option 1 rewards. The first is the 4 thunders. Thunder. Zeus knew that this was Zeus's famous weapon. With Zeus holding a thunderbolt, the entire universe will tremble under his lightning, and even chaos cannot be robbed of its edge. However, thunder was built later with the help of Hephaestus, the god of fire and craftsman, and it is still far away from now. And what are the four thunders? Could it be that there are four thunderbolts? And what is this awakening bell? Zeus made a decision in his heart. Choose option 1. Drip. The task is complete and the reward has been issued. Option 1 is to stay on the island to practice, so Zeus, who doesn't plan to go out, immediately considers the task completed. Zeus immediately felt the divine power in his thundercloud soar, and the thundercloud was crumbling, almost making Zeus unable to control it. Such a powerful divine power. After a while, Zeus hid alone in his thundercloud. On Sea God Island, there was an illusion created by Ocean God using seawater mist. Just in case, Zeus used lightning to create the illusion of heavy rain around him. His thundercloud was just one of the thousands of dark clouds. Zeus was confident that it was absolutely impossible for those stupid gargoyles to find him. After Zeus received the reward just now, he immediately found an excuse to leave and ran here to practice alone. Eurynomé, who wanted to play with Zeus angrily, stomped his feet. Is this the four thunders? Four fluid thunderbolts shining with golden light appeared in front of Zeus. This was the first time that Zeus saw his weapon thunder. The 150,000 black lightning bolts in his body resonated with these four thunderbolts, as if playing a symphony written with thunder on the ocean. Even the greatest craftsman, the thunder made by Hephaestus, the god of fire, is nothing more than that. And there are four of them. These four thunderbolts were held by Zeus. Each thunderbolt has the shackles of the 12 gods, and every time a shackle is opened, its power will be doubled. Zeus mobilized the divine power in his body and poured it into the thunder, so that the thunder and himself became one. Countless black lightning burst out from Zeus' eyes, hair, and fingertips. The pure black lightning wrapped Zeus heavily, and the four thunderbolts in his hand shone with golden light, competing with the black lightning. A huge wave of air swept out from the center of Zeus. Zeus's thundercloud was like a world of lightning, and 150,000 black lightning bolts sounded together, striking heavily on the thunderbolt. Two bolts of lightning collided with each other. Countless sparks were stimulated, and the sparks flew into the air shiningly, condensing into the shapes of Hercules, Phoenix, and Lyra. The divine power of Zeus condensed into bulls, lions, and falcons, roaring non-stop around him. Boom! 150,000 black lightning bolts erupted with terrifying killing intent at the same time. They condensed into a black Zeus, and together with Zeus, they held the thunder in their hands, and divine power crazily poured into it and eroded it. Gradually, the thunder that shone with golden light gradually began to burn out black flames. After 3 months, there was a scorching smell everywhere. Zeus sat upright in the dark thundercloud. 4 thunderbolts burning with black flames revolved around Zeus' right arm, and finally condensed into 4 lightning symbols, sinking into Zeus' palm. The initial erosion of the 4 thunderbolts was completed. The first 3 shackles were opened. Zeus opened his eyes, and the power that was absorbed in the blood of the ancient gods, which was almost to break the god's body, had been squeezed out, and all of it was absorbed into the 4 thunders. Zeus not only untied the 3 shackles of thunder, but also eroded it with the power of black lightning in his body, adding the vision of black flame to it, making its power even more violent and brutal. Although my divine power is exhausted, my mind has a deeper understanding of thunder and lightning in the process of shaping and eroding thunder and lightning. Before I know it, my realm will soon break through the 9th rank of middle god and leap to the upper rank god realm. My exclusive weapon, thunder. How strong is it? Zeus thought, stepping out of the thundercloud. Zeus stepped out of the thundercloud and fell to the ground. With a thought in his mind, a thunderbolt appeared in his hand, and the other 3 thunderbolts flew behind him, burning black flames and emitting dazzling golden light. Zeus took a step forward. The thunderbolt in his right hand suddenly turned into a lightning spear, and the 3 thunderbolts behind him also turned into 3 lightning spears. Zeus mobilized his divine power, condensed on the thunder spear, and threw it into the sky suddenly. The moment the lightning gun appeared, the intense high temperature directly set Zeus on fire. All the flowers, beautiful grass, rocks and ancient trees burned violently, the seawater evaporated into water vapor, and the smoke filled the entire sea area. Boom! Accompanied by the screaming sound of thunder and lightning, the javelin pierced through the fog, and the huge energy fundamental wave blasted a large white airflow, and the 4 lightning guns flew into the air, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. With a thought in Zeus's mind, the thunder appeared in his hand again, turning into a giant thunder sword. The other 3 thunders behind him turned into 3 black phantoms of Zeus, also holding the giant sword, making exactly the same posture. Zeus swung his sword, and the giant mountain in the distance exploded with a bang, and the boulders flew randomly. Then the 3 phantoms also swung their giant swords together. The whole mountain was split open, black flames burned, and the stones were burned and melted. The magma burned the giant mountain to the ground. Zeus turned the thunder into a thunderwhip, a thunderbow, and a thundershield, and performed various combat skills, all of which were handy. In fact, Lei Ting's most commonly used fighting method is to summon thunder and lightning, and directly strike the enemy. These 4 thunderbolts are really powerful. Zeus, who owns 1 thunderbolt, can firmly stabilize his divine court and rule the sky and the earth of Olympus, let alone 4. Breaking the shackles of thunder, practicing moves completely consumed Zeus' divine power. He called out the thundercloud and sat on it. By the way, there is this. Zeus took out a holy bell from the thundercloud. The holy bell was white and silver. The moment it appeared, Zeus faintly felt that there was a strong divine power fluctuating in it, which was so deep and obscure that even Zeus couldn't comprehend it. Zeus rang the holy bell in his hand, and it made a crisp sound, and the divine power flowed outward with visible ripples, but nothing happened. Zeus felt that its bell contained power beyond ancient times. This force is far stronger than his father. This is definitely a treasure even more precious than the blood of the ancient gods. Boom! Suddenly, there was a loud noise, followed by the sound of splashing water. A crisp voice sounded. Zeus, come out quickly. Zeus opened his thundercloud barrier and saw Métis sitting aside with a smile, looking at his sister with great interest. The short Eurynome held the bow of the ocean that Métis had used before, and bombarded Zeus's thundercloud barrier with one arrow after another. Of course, the sound is big, but the power is small. Seeing Zeus, Eurynome pursed her lips and said angrily, Zeus, where have you gone? My sister and I can't find you anymore. Ever since he made a marriage contract with Zeus, Métis has been a little out of his mind, wanting to meet Zeus all the time. As soon as she saw Zeus wrapped in lightning, she realized that his power had grown stronger again, as if he had reached a certain limit. Like a volcano gathering strength. Zeus, I feel that your divine power has become stronger again, Métis smiled. Zeus's supernatural power increased, and she was very happy. Since Zeus reached the 9th rank of the middle god, his consciousness and knowledge have grown explosively. The bell just rang again in Zeus's heart, as if he had realized something. Zeus' eyes suddenly flashed with lightning, and he looked at Métis. Métis, how long has it been since you reached the 6th level of the middle god? Many years. Métis was startled, then smiled wryly. She has been unable to break through this realm, as if a sea storm blocked her arc. Sea God Island's divine power is so strong that it can be transformed into an illusion, but absorbing the divine power can no longer allow me to break through. I need a clear understanding and awakening. Métis stared at the misty sea, his eyes were a little gloomy. She has a strong character and is not a goddess who gives up easily. I once disregarded my mother's dissuasion, and went to the junction of the ocean and the abyss to practice divine power. The divine power there was more intense and could be transformed into physical monsters. I practiced there for decades and slaughtered tens of thousands of monsters, but God's rank has not gone any further. At this moment, Zeus heard the holy bell ringing automatically in the thundercloud. This bell sound seems to have come from ancient times, crossed the long river of time, and came to the present. Zeus's heart was pounding, and suddenly, the bell sound carried majestic and pure energy, gathering on his fingertips. Zeus suddenly realized that this power from the holy bell of awakening could help break through the boundaries. Métis, I can help you break through the boundary, Zeus said in his heart, and sent a voice transmission to Métis. Break through the boundary? Métis opened her beautiful eyes in disbelief. Zeus stretched out his finger and gently tapped her forehead. Suddenly, the divine power in Métis' body and the ringtone began to resonate strongly. A mysterious and majestic power emerged, and Métis felt the shackles in her body be broken, and the next moment, majestic divine power rushed into her divine body crazily. The source of Métis divine power, a boundless fountain of life appeared. This fountain of life is full of life energy, and under the blessing of that mysterious power, it becomes more profound and powerful. All gods have the source of divine power, which is the source and concrete manifestation of the power of the gods. The source of Zeus' divine power is the mutated 150,000 black lightning bolts, and Métis is this deep blue fountain of life. Eurynome watched from the side dumbfounded. She saw Métis go up to chat with Zeus. Her affectionate appearance made her feel dissatisfied, and she was about to find fault to interrupt, when she found that her sister broke through the realm in an instant. Her red robe was flying in the strong wind, and the blue fountain of life gushed into the sky. God King. Eurynome read blankly. On Sea God Island, divine power permeates. Métis slowly landed on the ground. She opened her eyes, and looked at Zeus in surprise. Zeus, I broke through the barrier of the god rank and reached the 7th rank of the middle god. Métis was happy in her heart. Every time her strength increased, she would be able to contribute more to Zeus. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but be happy. Zeus. I want to try too. Zeus and Métis turned their heads, and saw Eurynome holding the white stag, sitting on the ground, looking at them eagerly. Zeus's eyes flashed with lightning, and he looked at Eurynome. She is still the 5th rank of the lower god. You know, when Zeus was just born, he had the supernatural power of a middle god. Zeus asked suspiciously, Eurynome, why is your divine power so weak? Métis looked at his sister and smiled. Eurynome, usually your mother has been teaching you the secrets of the Titans, asking you to practice hard and increase your divine power, but you either go to the white deer and the Pegasus to play around, or play with the dolphins and swimmers. Fish, sink into the ocean to pick coral. When was the last time you practiced? Eurynome was obviously a little afraid of her sister. Her little face blushed, and she hid behind the white deer, only showing her little head. Sister, practice the Titan's profound art and absorb divine power. It takes a few years to practice. It's too boring. People are too lazy to practice. Zeus smiled wryly. That was the character of Eurynome. It is indeed impossible to expect her to fight in the future when she establishes her own god court, or even competes with other gods for belief. She later became the goddess of water plants, flowers, pastures and fields, and gave birth to the 3 goddesses of grace representing magnificence, joy, and feast. For Zeus, wherever there is joy in the world, there are 3 goddesses of grace figure. The divinity of Eurynome is carelessness and joy. After thinking about it, Zeus took out 10 divine source stones from the thundercloud, which were the rewards he had received when he completed the selection earlier. Rich divine power evaporated from the origin stone, condensing into a rainbow of 7 colors, and above the rainbow, there were phantoms of Pegasus and unicorn flying. The divine power contained in each source stone is enough to practice the Titan's secrets for several years. Zeus smiled and handed the source of divine power to Eurynome, and patted her small head. Cultivate hard, Eurynome. When you feel that you have reached the limit, I will help you break through. Wow. Eurynome grabbed the origin stone, and the colorful light shone on her face, showing a sweet smile. When she was happy, flowers suddenly burst out from under her feet, and in an instant, the surrounding 100 meters became a sea of flowers. The aroma is overflowing. Beautiful. I want to show my unicorns. Eurynome held the source stone of divine power, rode on the white deer, and ran away bouncing around. Brother Zeus, I'll come and play with you later. Eurynome's voice disappeared into the distance. Seeing Eurynome running away, Métis took Zeus's hand. She likes you. Oh, why do you say that? Métis smiled and said, didn't you notice? Eurynome likes to stare at you, but when you look at her, she will turn her head away from you. The little girl's mind is like this. Didn't you do the same before, little girl? I'm not now. Métis grabbed Zeus' hand and let him touch his belly. Zeus felt an extremely strong wave of divine power vibrating in Métis' belly. You got pregnant just once? Yes. Métis blushed. This is a girl, and I feel that she will become your most capable assistant and the most outstanding child. That's right. Zeus nodded. The first child Métis gave birth to himself was the daughter of Bright Eyes, one of the 12 main gods of Olympus in the future, the goddess of war and wisdom, the first blooming star, the guardian of Athens, Athena. In historical records, Zeus also fell into the curse of the Titan who would be overthrown by his descendants. The terrified Zeus, looking at the expanding divine power in Métis' belly, was terrified, and swallowed Métis alive in one gulp. After swallowing Métis, Athena's divine power continued to grow day by day, causing Zeus to have a splitting headache and wailing all day long in his royal court. In the end, Zeus ordered Hephaestus, the god of fire, to split his head. Vulcan chopped off Zeus's head with an axe, and a beautiful goddess wearing a golden helmet, wearing a strong sword, holding a spear and a statue of the goddess of victory jumped out of it, dazzling, and the glory of victory was added to her. Métis never came out again, and became one with Zeus. But the records are just records, and Zeus is not afraid of the curse of the Titans. He would never swallow Métis. Zeus knew that Métis loved him deeply. "Hey, Métis, how about?" Zeus grabbed Métis' hand. Métis took a step back with a smirk, shook off Zeus's hand, and instantly turned into a red long-tailed swallow, flying into the air. "No, you come after me. You can't escape." The thunder shook, and Zeus turned into a golden falcon again, flying into the sky, chasing Métis. In the blink of an eye, decades have passed. Every day, Zeus could feel the growing power of the child conceived by Métis. Zeus practiced the secrets of the Titan all day long, refining the shackles in the thunder, and the divine power in his body became stronger and stronger. Zeus felt that the day of breaking through the middle god and ascending to the upper god was not far away. Usually, Zeus and Métis would go to admire the sea in the morning light, walk on the beach at dusk, and pick beautiful shells. Zeus polished a chessboard with seashells and tortoise shells, and taught Eurynome to play backgammon. Eurynome was fascinated, and came to Zeus to play chess all day long, but he couldn't win a single time, and then burst into tears. Zeus accompanied her to ride a Pegasus above the clouds and dive into the seabed to look for beautiful corals and jellyfish. Eurynome has a carefree personality and does not practice hard, but she is endowed with extraordinary talents and her divine power is gradually increasing. Zeus helped her advance to the rank of god of middle gods. Eurynome was used to having Zeus by her side, and she didn't want to leave for a day. One day, finally reached, dark and violent lightning surrounded Zeus, bursting out with extremely dazzling light. Zeus sat in his thundercloud, staring at the huge blood of the ancient god in front of him. He felt that his divine power was extremely abundant, and that divine power seemed to have life, and he was eager to try, wanting to break through the limit in one fell swoop. During these decades, Zeus gradually absorbed the remaining blood of the ancient gods, and this was the last drop. Zeus's side was full of divine power source stones. In these decades, the option appeared dozens of times, and each time Zeus chose to stay in Sea God Island and continue to practice. The obtained source stones of divine power are piled up with thunderclouds. Okay. Today, we will break through the barrier of the middle god and ascend to the rank of the upper god. Zeus's eyes flickered with thunder. Thundercloud, cover my figure. 100,000 black thunderclouds were born out of thin air and gathered on Sea God Island. Suddenly, the dark clouds covered the sky and the sun, and Zeus' violent divine power rushed straight up to the sky, filling the sky and the earth. 100,000 dark clouds turned into a barrier of thunderclouds. From the outside, Sea God Island was still calm, with birds singing and flowers fragrant, but any living beings who approached would be smashed into debris by lightning. Zeus sat upright among the 100,000 thunderclouds. The blood of the ancient gods merged into his divine body, and the divine power source stones around him evaporated and merged into Zeus' divine body. Terrifying divine power permeated this space, forming a resplendent divine court above Zeus's head. In the courtyard of the gods, there is a golden throne, and the eagle and the fierce lion are crawling beside the throne. Swords, shields, scepters and mirrors hang down on the throne. A moment later, in the golden court of God, a black god king wearing a crown was born, which looked like Zeus. He looked at the world with an invincible posture, and the eagle and the fierce lion hung down beside him like servants. He grabbed the sword, shield, scepter and mirror, and the endless divine light shone crazily on the treasure. Doppelganger. The double body is the inevitable road to the rank of God King. Behind the double is the Trinity. Zeus felt that his spiritual consciousness was profound and extensive, his whole body was light and agile, and the aromas of roses, olives, daisies, iris, oak, and figs were everywhere. Zeus, as the next Olympus god king, declare. Zeus held up his sword and solemnly declared, I will challenge the shackles of my god, it will not stop me. Zeus' divine voice came out, and infinite divine power poured into the resplendent divine court, and 16 shackles appeared in front of Zeus' eyes. Zeus held a scepter, a sword, a mirror and a shield by his side to protect him. His divine power was concentrated. He waved his hand and raised his sword, and infinite lightning burst out, cutting towards the shackles. Boom! The first shackles. The sky brightened 9 times in an instant, and immediately, a huge beam of divine power shot straight into the sky. Above the beam of light, rainbows rose slowly. All these visions were tightly covered by Zeus' barrier, but its violent fluctuations of divine power still swept away violently in all directions. The second shackle, the third shackle, the fourth shackle. Cut 15 shackles in a row. Zeus, who was surrounded by golden thunder and lightning, held a giant sword and looked at the last shackle in front of him. In Zeus' Titan memory, his father, Cronus, the dark god king, only cut off 13 shackles when he advanced to the rank of god king. And myself, when I advanced to the upper god, I needed to cut off the 16 paths? The 16th shackle burst out with terrifying power, the power of the meteor god, flowing out, the ancient and thick runes, spinning on it, the terrifying killing intent fluctuated, pressing Zeus back step by step. Looking at the last shackle in front of him, Zeus took out the silver bell of awakening. The bell of awakening floated up and down in front of his eyes, and the murmur from ancient times condensed into silver beads, ticking down. Ding! The bell of awakening rang automatically, and the magnificent divine power gushed out from it and merged into the divine body of Zeus. Push the boundaries. With the blessing of this ancient divine power, the sword in the hands of Zeus is even more powerful. The scepter in Zeus's hand turned into flowers, trees, birds, fish, animals, gods and monsters in the world. Bow down to Zeus together. Every time they worship, they will have the power of faith and merge into the divine body of Zeus. The worship of this group of creatures contained reverence, but it also contained fear. The fear turned into a rain of black arrows, flying towards Zeus, all of which were blocked by his shield. In his bright mirror, the birth, seeking food, spouse, death, and life of all spirits in the world are reflected like a revolving lantern. Finally, Zeus raised the sword in his hand high cut to the last shackle. Boom! A million miles away, the sea of clouds is entangled on the majestic Mount Olympus. This is the place where the first ray of sunlight and moonlight shine between heaven and earth. Here, the birds are singing and the flowers are fragrant all day long, and the sacred grasses and trees are luxuriant. Behind the arcades, the huge cloud garden is full of white daisies. They were created to celebrate the birth of Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. In the center of the garden stands the bronze statue of the god King Cronus. At the very center of the mountain, there is a great hall made of burning bronze. On the bronze throne, a king with blue-black flames all over his body, holding a scepter in his left hand and a sickle in his right hand, opened his eyes in amazement. Intense fear burst out in his eyes, panic and death throbbed in his heart. He is the king of Olympus, the Black Sun, the second god king, Cronus. Curse! Curse! The divine voice of Cronus wafted in the hall. Countless birds in the air were torn apart by the divine voice, and died one after another. It was as if a rain of corpses fell in the sky, and the flowers, plants and trees thousands of miles around Mount Olympus all died. Dead. I feel that the curse is coming. I feel that the greatest enemy in my life is stepping on the ladder to the god king. Cronos stood up angrily, tightly holding the sickle in his hand. Countless gargoyles burning with blue-black flames, covering the sky and covering the sun, flew from the sky and landed in the palace. They looked at the king of God, not daring to breathe. Finally, a gargoyle king with 100 eyes and 4 pairs of wings replied tremblingly. God king. We didn't find anything unusual. Keep looking, find him. I'm going to kill him and swallow him into my stomach. Keep looking. The wrath of the god king broke the hearts of the gargoyles. Mount Olympus, in another modest marble palace. A goddess in a snow-white robe, heroic and beautiful, stood in front of the mirror. She exuded an icy aura, as if a never-ending snowfall was falling around her. She also felt the sudden burst of divine power in the distance, and heard the angry cry of the God King. But she didn't move at all, still looking at the mirror in front of her coldly. She touched the mirror, and her beautiful blue eyes in the mirror were as deep as gems in the deep sea. The world is created, everything is waiting for the gods to determine the order, let the heaven and the earth run in the name of the law. The goddess murmured, and my brother, in eternal fear of that curse. There should be a law in the world. The goddess made up her mind. She took out a silver dagger, held it tightly with both hands, and stabbed her in the eye without any hesitation. Divine blood spewed out from her eye sockets. She raised her head in pain, and the divine blood rushed straight into the sky like a fountain. The goddess lost her eyes. The blood of God stained her pure white clothes. She bit off her clothes with her teeth, and tightly blindfolded her eyes with the blood-stained cloth. Blindfolding your eyes means not seeing the faces of those in dispute, and treating all creatures fairly, so that you will not be tempted by them, and you will be able to make a just judgment. The blood spurted from the goddess' eyes condensed into a silver scale and landed in her hand. The dagger that blinded her eyes turned into a long silver sword. The balance means the justice of the law, and the sword means the strictness of the law. The world should be governed by just laws, and gods and kings have no limits, so I will shape the laws. The stern voice of the goddess resounded in the hall. She held the silver sword high in her right hand and the balance in her left hand, and swore to the void. Under her oath, infinite divine power gushed out of thin air. The goddess is Themis, the sister of the god king Uranus, one of the 12 titans, the goddess of law and justice. The second wife of Zeus, Themis. The moment Themis made the oath, she heard the voice of the creatures in the world crying because of injustice. In the ocean a million miles away, a cry is particularly miserable. The first lawsuit in the world. A fair judgment, I will issue it. Mount Olympus, another small palace. The whole body of the palace is white, like a prehistoric giant egg. It is extremely smooth, but there is no door that can be entered or exited. Only at the top of this giant egg, there is a small hole, which is convenient for light to fold in. In the palace, it was pitch black, only a ray of light shone in the middle. This only beam of light just shone on a tall stone table, and in front of the stone table, there was a high chair. On the high chair sat a thin girl. Her face was pale, without a trace of blood. She has a pair of dragon eyes. The girl sat high on the high chair, her bare feet dangling in the air. Her long white hair was simply tied up and fell to the ground. She was wearing an unpretentious gray robe, holding a quill pen, writing on the desk intently. Countless silver-white light spots rose from the world, slowly drifted towards Mount Olympus, and finally fell into her palace. This silvery white spot of light is invisible, but in the eyes of the girl, it is as beautiful as stars. Silver-white light dotted the black hall, like a starry sky. Those dots of light are memories. The memories created by the creatures in the world, the happy, sad, angry, unwilling, and dying memories, all condense into light spots and flow into the girl's palace. Her dragon eyes see through the memories, and then stack them together. Written on the scroll. The maiden is Mnemosyne, one of the 12 titans, the goddess of memory, language, and writing, and the sister of the god king Cronus. Although she looks like a girl, her age is over hundreds of thousands of years old. Mnemosyne felt the sudden burst of divine power thousands of miles away, and heard her younger brother, God King Cronus, roar of fear, but she remained motionless. The quill in her hand kept rustling, writing down memories one after another. Of course she didn't know that the divine power that terrified the God King came from her future husband. Not far from this egg-shaped palace, a palace of light and shadow. Half of this palace is made of light, which is extremely intense, forming a solid light, and the other half is extremely dark, forming a solid shadow. All the gods of Olympus, as they passed by the palace, marveled at its eerily harmonious unity. Moreover, I secretly made a conclusion in my heart. The male master of this palace must be far stronger than her female master, because the shadow can actually exist on the side of the light. The owner of this palace is a couple among the 12 titans, just as Oceanus, the god of the ocean, and Thetis, the goddess of the sea, are combined, so they also form a couple. Zeus, the god of shadows, and Phoebe, the goddess of light. The god of shadow and the goddess of light are attending the meeting of the gods in the bronze hall of Cronus. At this moment, their daughter was sitting at the gate of the palace of light and shadow. One of them is graceful, with various postures. The long skirt on her body exudes the color of the starry sky, as if the starry sky was directly taken off and made into clothes for her. The wings behind her are as thin as a cicada's wings, also shining with the brilliance of the starry sky. She is the younger sister of the two, the future goddess of meteors, Asteria. The other goddess is plain and unpretentious. She is wearing black clothes and a black veil covering her face. If you look closely, she has a white and tender round face, a tourmaline-like nose, ruby-like lips, and delicate eyebrows. She is the older sister of the two, Leto, the future goddess of nurturing and conservation. Beside her is a crystal tableware, covered with feta cheese, grapes, dried meat, and nuts. Leto stuffed the food into his mouth one by one. "Sister, what did you say? Our priest and priestess went out in a hurry?" Meteor goddess Asteria widened her eyes, looking at the huge and burning bronze palace in the distance. Her pupils are as beautiful as stars. "Ah, what did you say?" Sister Leto's cheeks were swollen and stuffed with cheese. "My sister is eating mortal food again." The meteor goddess Asteria punched her sister. Hearing her sister's teasing, Asteria's round face flushed like a ripe apple. "Sister, I'm hungry. I can't get enough of the divine meal and divine dew provided by Shenting." Leto is the future goddess of nurturing, and when women are nurturing, they need a lot of nutrition to supply their children. At this moment, Leto's divinity had begun to emerge, so she was always hungry for no reason. Asteria turned her head to look at her sister. She loves her sister very much, but she doesn't understand why her sister has become more and more hungry recently, eating almost all the time. "Did you hear the roar of the God King just now?" Sister Leto Ejung said in frustration, "I just fell asleep and didn't hear anything." "Sister is stupid," Asteria puffed up her cheeks. "Did you feel the fluctuation of the divine power in the distance? There was a surge of divine power, and then the God King became furious. Is it going to start a war again?" Asteria continued. "I didn't feel anything." Leto shook her head and ate another bunch of grapes and jerky. Asteria fell down and lay on top of the main hall, looking at the roof of the Temple of Light and Shadow. "I really envy my sister. You don't have to worry about anything." The older sister, Leto, was the destined fifth wife of Zeus. She will give birth to two excellent children for Zeus. One is Apollo, the god of light, and the other is Artemis, the goddess of wilderness and hunting. Sea God Island, in the invisible thundercloud. Zeus slowly opened his eyes. The rank of the upper god has arrived. After devouring 9 drops of the blood of the ancient gods, Zeus's bloodline has been promoted to the bloodline of the original gods. After cutting off the shackles of the 16 gods, Zeus felt that his divine power was much stronger than before. Zeus felt so powerful that he could lift the entire Sea God Island with one finger and throw it into the sky. Drip. Option is on. 2 lines of small dim characters appeared in front of Zeus' eyes. Option 1. Pursue Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, and obtain the profound meaning of the divine breath of chaos. Option 2. Stay on the island, continue to practice, and get meteor wings. Seeing the reward, Zeus' pupils flickered with light. The meteor wings are a good thing. These are the wings behind the meteor goddess. Flap your wings to summon a storm of stars. 100,000 meteors fell from the sky, shining all over the starry sky, and all the creatures in the world trembled. However, Zeus' eyes were immediately attracted by the reward of option 1. The Chaos God's breath mystery is the Chaos God's cultivation method, which is the top cultivation technique in this god's domain. The world was originally in chaos, and the Chaos God was born out of the chaos. Then came the primordial gods, and then the titans. In the memory of my own blood, what is inherited is the profound meaning of Titan. The Titan profound technique is also a supreme cultivation technique, but comparing it to the primal chaos divine breath profound technique is like comparing clay to gems, and comparing rotten residual fruits to golden apples in paradise. And Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, the most beautiful goddess among the gods. In terms of appearance alone, she overwhelmed Hera behind her, and overwhelmed Athena, the goddess of war and wisdom. According to records, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, later married Hephaestus, the son of Zeus, the god of fire and craftsman. But Vulcan is ugly and lame, hiding in his volcano all day long, forging the weapons used by the gods. Aphrodite fell in love with another son of Zeus, Ares, the god of war. Vulcan was so angry that he fought with Ares, which stirred up a 3-year-old fire on Mount Olympus. And Ares is just one of the countless confidants of Aphrodite, the god of beauty. It can be said that the color of the poor Vulcan's head is very dark. Zeus thought to himself, this troublesome goddess will not bother her son this time. And, now is the perfect time to chase Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty. Because the god king Cronus did not create human beings, there are no men in the world. Moreover, Cronus was afraid of the curse, and only gave birth to 6 children with Rhea, and swallowed them all except Zeus. So in this god's domain at this time, except for a few titans, there are very few gods. Aphrodite is still pure at this time. Most importantly, Zeus needed Aphrodite to give birth to his son. Aphrodite was transformed from the tree of life of Uranus, the black sun, of the first generation of god-kings, and the blood of gods is extremely noble. The child she conceived for herself must have extremely strong divine power. Zeus needs more sons who are loyal to him to be born, to serve as priests in his court, and to contribute to the future war with other gods for belief. Zeus seeks more sons of God with only one purpose, to strengthen his power in the divine court. Zeus was promoted to the high god, and his knowledge of God was much stronger than before. In the eyes of Zeus, lightning and thunder were shining, and his spiritual consciousness spread in the continent, islands and valleys of Olympus, and he kept searching. Zeus saw Aphrodite walking in a dense forest 1,000,000 miles away. She has perfect body, blonde hair and blue eyes, with white porcelain skin. Graceful and charming, full of beauty, the beauty makes people tremble. Pink and white rose petals fell around her like a never-ending rain of roses. 36 nymphs accompanied her, covering their faces and singing hymns to Aphrodite loudly. Except for the goddess with powerful divine power, almost all female creatures will always cover their faces after seeing Aphrodite. Because Aphrodite's beauty made them feel ashamed, and they no longer want to let the creatures in the world see their faces. Zeus looked up at the sky, where countless gargoyles were densely covered all day long. After he advanced, the number of gargoyles increased significantly, apparently at the order of god King Cronus. Zeus' thundercloud barrier perfectly concealed all visions, and the gargoyles could only search in vain in this boundless sea. Zeus hid his breath, turned into a golden eagle, and flew into the sky. The group of stupid gargoyles didn't find anything unusual. Zeus crossed the ocean, and after 36 nights, he finally saw a beautiful island. The flowers on the island are in full bloom, and the beautiful trees are lined with lush greenery. The singing of the nymphs resounded throughout the sea. Aphrodite. In the middle of the island, there is a clear spring. Aphrodite and the nymphs are among them. Aphrodite didn't have to scrub the divine body herself. As soon as she entered the water, the clear water flowed back up her white neck to cleanse it. There was a trembling thunder, and Zeus landed beside the spring in the golden light. Many nymphs covered their faces and couldn't see Zeus, but they felt a strong wave of divine power, and this majestic and abundant divine power made their hearts tremble, and they wished they could come to Zeus immediately and follow him forever. Nymphs are naturally born creatures in the dense forest. They are naturally attracted by divine power and surround the gods. Zeus was surrounded by black lightning, and his long golden hair fluttered. His face was classically and majestically beautiful, and his majestic divine power eroded the hearts of all living beings present. This is the greatness and supreme aura that only a god-king can possess. The moment Zeus appeared, Aphrodite's eyes were fixed on him. Her red lips parted slightly, and there was a smile in her watery eyes. Majestic and elegant king, what is your purpose for coming here? Aphrodite's divine voice sounded like the sound of heaven. Aphrodite was attracted to Zeus, and she fell in love with him from the first moment of his presence. Aphrodite is the goddess of beauty, the male creature she likes, who does not need power, wealth and force. She just needs the other person to be beautiful. What attracted her was not only Zeus' classical and handsome appearance, but also the majestic aura exuding from Zeus, his majesty and his dazzling thunder. These made Zeus full of masculine beauty, thundering like a drum, beating in Aphrodite's heart. The beautiful god-king, as the god of beauty and love, Aphrodite never showed the timidity and shyness of a woman, and she always expressed her love directly. You have attracted me, please come to my garden. The divine power on Aphrodite's body burst out, and in an instant, the clear spring, dense forest and many nymphs all disappeared. Zeus found himself in a rose garden, with countless crimson roses. The leaves were covered with dewdrops, is blooming. Zeus entered Aphrodite's rose garden, which was the source of Aphrodite's divine power and an illusion created by her. Zeus turned into a golden thundercloud floating above this beautiful rose garden. All of a sudden, thunderclouds began to rain down golden rain, covering every rose in the rose garden. After an unknown amount of time, Zeus opened his eyes. He looked around, he was still at the edge of the clear spring, the nymphs were sleeping, and Aphrodite disappeared. Zeus suddenly found a golden red rose pendant hanging on his neck, with a ruby inlaid in the middle. Zeus's mind froze, and his memory floated up. He turned into golden rain and fell in the rose garden for 30 mornings and evenings. In the end, all the roses in the rose garden dropped their bonsai. Then Zeus used his divine power to turn the rose garden into a pendant and hang it on his neck. My king, you are awake. Zeus heard Aphrodite's divine voice. Did you turn me into a pendant? Aphrodite appeared in front of Zeus. She's still stunningly beautiful. She smiled, her blue eyes were poetic, our hearts coincide, and I also want to be by your side all day long. But I want to feel the power of your thunder, that power shakes me, so I don't want to be a pendant, Aphrodite said with a smile, her dark blue eyes fixed on Zeus, touchingly. Suddenly, Aphrodite turned into a gold-red ring with a rose engraved on it. The ring floated up and was worn on Zeus' thumb. The ring shone with a rosy light. Zeus stroked the lines on the ring, realizing in his heart that he could find Aphrodite at any time, and she could also find Zeus at any time. Drop. A row of small characters appeared in front of Zeus. Mission completed. You gain the mysteries of chaos breath. Countless mysterious runes appeared in front of Zeus. These runes came from the beginning of the world. These runes are terrifying and great, twisting but implying truth. They blended into the center of Zeus's eyebrows, and suddenly, Zeus mastered the mysteries of the divine breath of chaos. As if the universe was born once, the ancient divine voice sounded in Zeus's heart. The ancient mysteries are passed on to you. King, you need to know that on the road to the peak of faith, there are blood wine filled in gold bottles and a crown made of thorns. The ancient language came to an abrupt end. Blood wine filled in golden goblets, and a crown made of thorns. Zeus savored these words, which meant that on the way to the highest, there was supreme glory and supreme suffering. The turbulent airflow centered on Zeus and swept away in all directions. Some of the creatures who came into contact with these air currents died immediately, and some erupted with astonishing power, completing the advanced stage in an instant. The profound meaning of chaos god's breath. Zeus closed his eyes and looked at himself, feeling the profound meaning of the chaotic divine breath. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes with complicated emotions. It is like comparing clay with precious stones. Compare rotten fruit with golden apples in paradise. Compare vulgar powder with the goddess on the mountain. Compared with the profound truth of chaos god's breath, the titan profound truth that I had practiced before was so shallow and ridiculous. Not only will the speed of cultivation be several times faster, but the strength will be several times stronger. However, the required divine power is also boundless, and the divine power on Sea God Island is obviously insufficient. Drip. Select on. 2 lines of small dim characters appeared in front of Zeus. Option 1. Go to the junction of the ocean and the abyss to practice and obtain the secrets of chaos training. Option 2. Return to Sea God Island to practice and get the dragonbone giant sword. Zeus fixed his eyes on the keel sword. A giant sword made from the 9-headed dragon bone in the deep sea. Swinging the giant sword can summon the phantom of the 9-headed dragon. Zeus shook his head. It seems to be a powerful weapon, but Zeus already has a powerful thunder, he does not need other weapons. Although he had left Sea God Island for a long time, Zeus longed to meet Métis. Zeus turned his attention to option 1. Go to the junction of the ocean and the abyss to practice. There is an abyss in this god's domain, named Tartarus. According to historical records, Hades, the king of the underworld, is in charge of the underworld in the abyss of Tartarus, where the souls of mortals are supposed to return to after death. However, there are no humans yet, so the abyss of Tartarus is empty at this moment. Only the 100-armed giant and the Cyclops are imprisoned in it. The god king Cronus feared that the 100-armed giant and the Cyclops would threaten his court, so he drove them into the abyss. Whenever you approach the abyss of Tartarus, you will always hear the mournful cry of the giants. At the end of the ocean, there is a thick fog that will never disperse, and there is the junction of the ocean and the abyss of Tartarus. There is a lot of divine power there, and Métis also went there to hunt and kill monsters that were materialized by divine power. The monsters directly materialized by divine power are the best nourishment for the current Zeus. He needs enormous divine power. There is also its reward, the secrets of body forging in chaos, which obviously form a set with the secrets of chaos divine breath. The chaos body forging mystery can strengthen the body of the gods, while the chaos god's breath mystery can enhance the divine power. Zeus, who has experienced the power of the secrets of the divine breath of chaos, is looking forward to this set of body training secrets. Zeus summoned a thundercloud and sat in it, with lightning and thunder in his eyes, and his spiritual consciousness shot into the distance violently, looking at the end of the ocean. Suddenly, Zeus heard a weeping voice, full of unwillingness and grief, cursing the injustice of the gods. This cry of grief and indignation just came from the junction of the ocean and the abyss, in the dense fog. The later Zeus is the god of the gods, the king of kings, the controller of thunder, and the guardian of the sky and the earth. Among his many titles, there is one that is less well known, keeper of order. The living beings in the world should respect the gods, and the gods enjoy the sacrifices of living beings. The gods should also maintain their divine domain and bring order to the living beings. And cursing the gods is a great destruction of the order that should exist in the world. This is what Zeus does. Although Zeus is not yet the king of gods, his divinity has gradually emerged. Zeus was very curious in his heart. What was it that made the creature feel dissatisfied and complain to the gods in grief and indignation? With curiosity in mind, Zeus turned into an eagle and flew to the end of the ocean. The golden eagle flew towards the end of the ocean, and Zeus felt that the divine power was getting stronger and stronger. At first, divine power condensed into various illusions, and Zeus saw a rainbow bridge made of 12 rainbows, undulating in the sea of clouds. Then the divine power gradually increased, and the divine power here condensed into rain. Golden and silver drizzles fell from the sky, and every drop of rain contained majestic divine power. Moving forward, the divine power is more abundant here, condensing into hailstones and colorful beads, falling from the sky, like a colorful hailstorm. Finally, an endless, infinitely wide thick fog appeared in front of my eyes. Beyond the dense fog is an invisible barrier, and the outside world is an unknown world. The power of that barrier is so strong that even God King Cronus cannot open it. The divine power here is extremely strong, and Zeus saw the divine power condensed into a hanging garden, with countless exotic flowers and plants, and rare spirit beasts running through it. There is a fountain in the middle of the garden, and the spring water flows out, forming rivers and huge oceans. The sound of weeping and cursing appeared here. Zeus descended into the hanging garden, which was enormous. Surrounded by birds and flowers, there are all kinds of exotic flowers and fruits. Zeus took a bunch of grapes at random and extracted the divine power from them. The divine power contained in a small bunch of grapes is comparable to that of the source stone of divine power. Soon the divine power in the grapes was extracted by Zeus and turned into gray gravel. Looking at this huge hanging garden, Zeus was a little jealous. Absorbing all of this sky garden condensed by divine power can consolidate one's divine power of the upper god, and even break through to the first level of the upper god. Thunder flashed in Zeus's eyes, and he saw an island in the sea in the sky garden. On the island, there is a large group of mermaids gathered together, seeming to be arguing fiercely about something. The creatures in the sea include sirens and mermaids. Mermaids have the same appearance as sirens, female creatures with human bodies and fishtails, but they are not the same species. The siren has a vicious personality, a very pleasant singing voice, and the ability to confuse people. According to the legends of later generations, the sailors sailing in the fog sometimes heard beautiful singing resounding over the sea, and that was the singing of the sirens. Fascinated by the singing, the crew would jump into the sea, follow the sirens, and eventually become food in their mouths. But the character of the mermaid is more simple and simple, living among the corals in the ocean. It is said that if the mermaid finds someone who truly loves her, she will lose her tail forever and live ashore, endowed with divine power like an angel. If deceived, it will turn into white foam and disappear into the sea. Zeus flew to the island, and he saw a large number of mermaids gathered on the island, and they were watching a trial. On the judgment stand made of coral, sat a male creature. He has 9 heads, his skin is covered with blue-black scales, his eyes are vicious, and 18 blood-red eyes stare viciously at a mermaid in front of him. The 9-headed man held a barbed whip in his hand, which was covered in blood. Zeus hides his divine body and mobilizes his divine power. At a glance, he saw that the 9-headed man was a hydra in the deep sea, a monster with incomparable divine power. Under the judgment platform, there is a mermaid kneeling. There were bloodstains on her back, her face was pretty and pale, and her face was full of tears. Beside her, there is a large coral seat on which a mermaid sits. She was wearing luxurious clothes and a gemstone necklace, holding a crying little mermaid in her arms, and looked at the mermaid kneeling on the ground with a cold smile on her face. Brush. The whip cut through the air, and hit the mermaid kneeling on the ground heavily on the back, bringing out a pool of blood. A flash of lightning flashed in her mind, she trembled in pain, tears condensed into pearls, and flowed down one by one. Chunju, you still haven't pleaded guilty? Are you still unwilling to accept my fair trial? Hydra raised the long whip in its hand coldly and asked. I do not accept. The Hydra whipped again, and her screams of pain resounded across the island. Many onlookers covered their eyes in fear. You still refuse to admit that the little mermaid is Qingqian's child, and you want to snatch it? The mermaid kneeling on the ground raised her head, her face full of anger and unwillingness. The little mermaid is my child, and she wants to snatch my child. Still talking hard. Hydra sneered, waving his hand in the air, his divine power condensed, and turned into a pair of iron tongs burning with flames. He stepped on the mermaid's back, grabbed her sea blue hair, and clamped it around her fingers with iron tongs. No. The mermaid was terrified, and she couldn't break free. She watched with trembling fingers being pinched with blood, and her screams rang out across the island. Zeus has advanced to the upper god. His spiritual consciousness is extremely powerful, and he can see the origin of this lawsuit at a glance. The mermaid kneeling on the ground is named Chunju, and the mermaid sitting beside her, dressed luxuriously and holding the little mermaid with a sneer, is named Qingqian. They all declare that they are the mother of the little mermaid, and they are fighting for custody. Judged by the master of this ocean, the deep sea Hydra. There is thunder in Zeus' eyes, and no false illusion can stop his eyes. He sees. Mermaid Qingqian is actually a siren. Zeus saw that there were pearls, sapphires and beautiful shells in the belly of the deep sea Hydra. Among these treasures are the breaths of sirens. Apparently, Siren Qingqian bought the deep sea Hydra with treasures, so the Hydra beat her into a trick, forcing the mermaid Chunju to admit the crime of non-existence, and raped the child. Mermaid Chunju was dripping with blood from being whipped, and was about to lose her own child. She was filled with grief and indignation, and cursed the injustice of the gods. This grief and curse was so strong that Zeus felt it. Should I chop the Hydra into ashes with thunder, or chop off its 9 heads with a single sword? Zeus thought lazily, and was about to make a move. Brush, a strong fluctuation of divine power, a dazzling silver light shone on the island, and all creatures couldn't help but close their eyes. A silver sword made a clanging sound and roared with powerful divine power. It flew from the air and sank into the ground, the hilt trembling. A noble and elegant goddess, dressed in a white robe and covered with blood-colored white cloth, descended from the sky. The goddess exudes icy divine power, which is as sharp as a knife, making people afraid to look directly at her. Holding a silver balance in her hand, she walked step by step, drew out her sword, and looked at the creatures present. This trial is unfair. It's her. Zeus shuddered. The daughter of the first generation of god King Uranus, the sister of the current god King Cronus, one of the 12 titans, the goddess of law and justice, Themis. Zeus' breath and body were all hidden in the air, and no one among the living beings found him. Zeus stared at Themis' blindfolded eyes, which were covered with blood, and realized something in his heart. In his memory, Themis had blue eyes as deep as the sea. She pierced her own eyes and vowed to uphold the justice of the law, thus gaining supreme divine power and becoming the goddess of law and justice. Zeus felt Themis' divine power fluctuate violently. Why is her divine breath so weak? In later generations, Themis, as the goddess of law and justice, has infinite power in her hand with the evil silver sword. She is one of the most powerful goddesses in Olympus, no less than Athena. But at this moment, her divine breath was weak, and her divine power fluctuated violently like a stormy sea, fluctuating from time to time. Zeus realized. Themis is seriously injured and trying to hide it. Zeus closed his eyes, and the lightning flashed and thundered in his eyes, piercing through time and seeing the past. Zeus saw that on Mount Olympus, Themis had just stabbed his eyes blind and covered him with a bloody blindfold. The sound of heavy footsteps came, and a king with double wings, burning blue and black flames all over his body, and holding a sickle stepped into her palace. The angry voice of god King Cronus resounded through Olympus. Themis, I called a meeting of the gods to discuss important matters, why didn't you attend? It's about the fluctuation of divine power that makes you tremble and fear. Themis held the silver sword in his hand, his voice was cold. I heard the injustice between heaven and earth, and I have to solve it. I don't have time to discuss your timid heart. Themis, you dare to challenge my authority? How dare you set up a private priesthood in an attempt to establish your authority? The flames on Cronus erupted suddenly, illuminating the entire night sky. In an instant, it was as bright as day on Mount Olympus. Cronus, as the king of gods, should have all the priesthood conferred by him. And Themis swore an oath with a sword, established the law, and established himself as the goddess of law and justice, which was regarded as disloyalty to the god king. Your divine court has been established for 10,000 years, but only a few priesthoods have been set up. In the world, grievances and injustices are burning like wildfire. I can't bear it any longer. Themis turned her head and faced the god king coldly. Cronus, my brother, great king of gods. You drove the 100-armed giant and the Cyclops into the abyss, swallowed your own children, and drove the ocean gods Oceanus and Theseus to the ocean. On the edge of the world, watching your Titan brothers and sisters all the time. There are a large number of vacancies in the priesthood, the world is chaotic and disorderly, and your heart is captured by fear and curse. Don't let fear take over your heart. Themis stared at Cronus, her eyes were blindfolded, but she seemed to see through the soul. Themis, you must not judge your god king. I regard your actions as betrayal. Are you going to betray my court? Cronus raised his sickle, full of terrifying killing intent. The killing intent condensed into a raging fire, which was as cold as ice, burning blazingly in the hall. If you insist on that, I'm leaving. Themis stepped out of the hall without looking at him. I declare that you are no longer among the gods of Olympus. Cronus looked at Themis back, and his angry voice resounded through Olympus. I sentence you to death. Cronus raised his scythe and slammed it down on Themis. Themis turned around, and the silver sword and balance turned into a shield, blocking the sickle. The divine power collided, the hall collapsed, and the entire holy mountain of Olympus trembled. The burst of air blows all the daisies in the garden of the holy mountain. The shield transformed from the silver sword and the balance shattered instantly. One arm of Themis was cut off directly, and the blood of the gods was sprayed on the hall. Themis fell heavily to the ground. The divine blood frantically flowed out from Themis' wound and flowed down the holy mountain of Olympus, forming a huge bloody waterfall. Cronus showed no mercy. He took a step forward, and the scythe in his hand was full of fierce flames, and he slashed at Themis. Themis gritted her teeth, and in an instant, a silver judgment seat appeared. On the judgment stand, the book of the law is placed in the middle, the silver sword is placed on the left, and the balance is placed on the right. 15 candlesticks were burning. This is the source of Themis' divine power. On the judgment stand, 3 candlesticks burned crazily, turning into a ray of silver divine power, which merged into Themis' body. Transforming into a silver owl, Themis escaped Cronus' scythe and flew out of Mount Olympus. But she did not escape the divine fire on the sickle, and the fierce flame burned her, and she sank into the ocean. It took 33 mornings and evenings for the flames to go out. Finally, Themis climbed ashore from the abyss of the ocean. Her face was covered in blood, her complexion was pale, and her powers were weak. She stood up and attached her severed limb. Continue walking in the direction from which the crying sound came. Zeus opened his eyes, and a fire of anger ignited in his heart. Cronus almost killed Themis. Black lightning raged in Zeus's body, almost uncontrollable. Themis is his destined wife. Zeus controlled the violent lightning in the god's body and stared at Themis. Holding the sword and scales, she walked towards the nine-headed man step by step. Zeus didn't want to show up yet, because he hadn't seen Themis' divine power yet. "Who are you?" The nine-headed man slapped the table and stood up. His power of a behemoth burst out suddenly. 18 blood-red eyes stared fiercely at Themis, and the phantom of the deep-sea Hydra was about to move behind him. "I am the law itself." Themis looked cold, and she raised the evil-killing silver sword in her hand, aiming at the Hydra. "Your heart is unfair, and you have not judged the testimony of both parties before you make a judgment. Your judgment has no effect." "Ha ha ha ha. What is the law? Is it shells, aquatic plants, or fish and shrimp in the deep sea?" The nine-headed man laughed wildly. He turned into a prototype, and a huge mountain-like Hydra with black scales appeared. With a mouth full of blood, the wind blew his nostrils, and his blood-red eyes stared at Themis, showing a fierce look. The huge head of the Hydra hung down and stopped in front of Themis, and one of his eyes was bigger than Themis. "Cute little girl. What is your so-called testimony? Do you want to eat the fish and shrimp I ate last night?" Looking at the huge Hydra like a mountain, Themis felt colder and colder in his heart. The deep-sea Hydra is the overlord of this sea area, and his ancient beast power is close to that of a high god. "I have not healed from serious injuries, and fighting this giant beast is more dangerous than good. However, this is the first lawsuit in the world, and it must have a fair trial." Themis gritted her teeth. The source of divine power exploded, and was about to burn the source of divine power, when suddenly she felt an incomparably majestic and violent divine power pouring into her body. The silver sword in his hand was actually shining with black lightning. "Presumptuous." The clear voice of Themis resounded across the island, and a silver light flashed. Themis held a sword in both hands, and pierced the giant eye of the Hydra with one sword. The silver sword sank straight into the handle, and then Themis pulled out the silver sword fiercely. The 9 heads of the Hydra let out an earth-shattering scream. All died through. The Hydra wailed, 9 heads danced in the air, and his furious voice resounded through the world. "You." Hydra's eyes were bleeding profusely, and the terrifying power of the ocean boiled all over his body. He looked down at the cold Themis, extremely angry, as if his heart was burning. "Wait." Suddenly, Hydra felt a little strange. Because of the power contained in the silver sword in her hand. The power of thunder. That power is so dark and violent, and has supreme terror and majesty. Hydra's expression gradually became dignified. He provoked Themis because he felt Themis's divine power was weak. Where did this violent dark power come from? Fear gradually took over Hydra's body. Reason defeated anger. Hydra turned its head, sank into the sea, and disappeared. The power of dark thunder on the silver sword of Themis comes from Zeus. Zeus felt that the moment Themis received the power of his thunder, her divine knowledge was frantically shooting in all directions, trying to find the source. The blood of Zeus has been promoted to the original god, and his divine power is so strong that Themis can't find him at all. Zeus did not show up. He wanted to see how Themis judged the lawsuit. Not finding the source of that divine power, Themis looked dignified, but she knew that divine power was not malicious. Turning her head, her face was covered in blood, and she was holding a sword that was stained with snake blood. Her expression was still as cold as ice. "Mer people, let's continue this trial. Please state your testimony." Only then did everyone wake up, and looked at the sirens and mermaids present. Sitting on the coral throne, the siren stared fiercely at Themis. She gritted her teeth, breathed out the spray, and said in a sharp voice, "Stop talking nonsense. I am the daughter of the snakes, the daughter of Echidna. Give your sentence and let this child be mine." "Daughter of snakes, Echidna." Zeus looked at the siren chin. It turns out that this siren has such a noble lineage. Just as the body of the sky is Uranus, the body of the earth is Gaia, the body of the abyss is the god of the abyss, Tartarus. Tartarus is both a god and the abyss itself. He is one of the few chaos gods who survive to this day. Tartarus, the god of the abyss, and Gaia, the mother of the earth, gave birth to the daughter of snakes, Echidna. Echidna's upper body is a beautiful girl, and her lower body is 100 poisonous snakes. She is the mother of many monsters in Olympus. The many mermaids present were silent. They looked at the siren Qingqian. Echidna's vicious reputation has long been known to the mermaids. What about you? Themis turned to mermaid Pure Pearl unmoved. My mother is a mermaid. She fell in love with a tree spirit, gave birth to me, and then turned into foam and disappeared into the sea. The mermaid Chunju said timidly. The words of the daughter of Chaos God and the daughter of Bubble have the same weight. Tell your testimony. Themis' voice was as cold as an iceberg. I can give you enough pearls and sapphires to fill an ocean. Give your judgment and give me the child. Siren Qingqian's eyes were on fire. She swung her arms, and countless shining sapphires appeared out of thin air. Ding, it fell to the ground and piled up as high as a hill. My tears can turn into pearls, but I can't cry anymore. I can give you a beautiful shell. The mermaid lowered her head and said softly. Sapphires enough to fill the ocean are as valuable as a shell. Themis' voice was still cold, and she raised the scale in her hand. Speak your testimony. Let the scale weigh them. The balance erupted with dazzling silver light, and the divine power fluctuated violently. The divine power enveloped the island. The siren and the mermaid opened their mouths at the same time, and the light came out from their mouths, telling their testimony. Their testimony transformed into 2 volumes of pages, falling on opposite ends of the scale. One end of the balance fell heavily. Obviously, the mermaid's testimony was far more important than the siren's. Many creatures were in an uproar. The winner is Mermaid Pure Pearl. Return her child to the original owner. Themis's cold voice resounded on the island. She raised the silver sword in one hand and pressed towards the siren. The siren's face was gloomy. She gritted her teeth and sat on the coral throne. Blue gemstones fell from her one by one, like rain. Zeus saw Themis holding the sword and advancing step by step, but her hands were shaking. Themis burned the source of divine power and escaped the slaughter of Cronus, which was equivalent to burning her own life. Now she is very weak. The gods are immortal, but if the source of divine power dries up, the gods also die. Themis' sword pointed at the tip of Siren's nose, and Siren suddenly smiled. You can force me to hand over the child with a sword, but I am not convinced. You use the balance to weigh our oath and make a judgment. Why? What is your so-called law? Indeed. Yes. A large number of mermaids gathered around, discussing a lot. Themis was taken aback. Zeus sighed. Themis is the incarnation of the law, and her judgment is the most just. In the hereafter, all living beings will obey her judgment. But now, Themis's divine power is insufficient, and the law is new, and its meaning has not been accepted and understood by all living beings. To put it simply, for this lawsuit to convince many mermaids, it still needs to be reasonable. Zeus felt the power of Themis fluctuate violently. This is the world's first lawsuit, and it must be justly resolved. Zeus appeared. Thunder shines on the island, majestic and terrifying divine power pervades. Zeus appeared in front of all living beings, wrapped in black thunder, and their hearts roared like drums. They were overwhelmed by this divine power, and their hearts trembled, as if countless lightning had struck their hearts. They unconsciously wanted to bow their heads and praise the king loudly, coming. The mermaids present looked at Zeus with admiration, and their hearts were shaken by the majestic power of Zeus. The dark thunder on Zeus brought a strong wind, blowing the short silver hair of Themis. She still looked at Zeus calmly. Noble god, who are you and why are you here? Themis' cold voice sounded, and she knew that the great existence in front of her was not malicious, and even saved her life just now. But if he obstructs the trial and tries to make an unfair judgment, he will burn all the sources of divine power and burn the siren to ashes. Zeus stared at the beautiful and noble Themis, admiring in his heart. Aphrodite is pure beauty, nothing else. The beauty of Themis is noble, dignified, and sacred. Drip. The option is on. 2 lines of small characters appeared in front of Zeus. Option 1. Conquer Themis' heart. Reward Aegis, the Aegis of Aegis. Option 2. Keep your distance from Themis. Reward the Spear of the Mist. Aegis, the shield of Zeus. This is a shield belonging to Zeus, a sheepskin shield made for Zeus by the later Vulcan, with powerful defensive power. Later Zeus gave it to Athena, and Athena passed it on to the demigod hero Perseus. Perseus beheaded Medusa, and integrated her head into this shield, and this shield had the ability to release petrified light. As for option 2, Zeus didn't look at it. Zeus did not hesitate at all, and made a choice in his heart. Choose option 1. Because Themis was his destined wife, and Zeus' court needed her laws to bring justice to the world. What's more, Themis of later generations is extremely powerful in combat, no less than Athena. It is a great help for my own gods. My god king. Do you want the power of love to be attached to you? Aphrodite's lazy divine voice reached Zeus' ears, and she felt Zeus' state of mind. Aphrodite has the power to make living beings fall in love. In later generations, her child Cupid used the golden arrow engraved with his name to make all beings fall in love. Zeus rejected Aphrodite's kindness. He didn't need this kind of magic to convince Themis. Honorable goddess of law, the world is dull and has not yet understood the prestige of the law. Leave it to me here, and I will give a fair and convincing verdict. The unstoppable power of Zeus, accompanied by thunder, pierced Themis' heart. Themis felt her source of divine power blazing, and the 3 extinguished candles seemed to be rekindled. As if a heavy hammer of judgment was struck in his heart, Themis was unsteady and jumped wildly. The goddess, who was as cold as an iceberg, also became restless in her heart at this moment. She nodded. The moment Zeus appeared, the eyes of all the mermaids fell on him. They all acquiesced to the authority of Zeus, and were subdued by his incomparably majestic, violent and majestic divine power. The dark thunder of Zeus shines, and he faces the creatures. This lawsuit is for the custody of the Little Mermaid. Everything started with the Little Mermaid, so it should end with her. The unstoppable power of Zeus swept towards the siren and grabbed the Little Mermaid in her arms. The Little Mermaid floated out of nowhere, landed on the thundercloud, and flew to Zeus. The moment she fell into the thundercloud, the crying Little Mermaid smiled sweetly and fell asleep peacefully. Zeus stared at the siren Chin and the mermaid Pure Pearl with majestic eyes. A huge tremor resounded in their hearts, and the eyes of the god king seemed to see through all their secrets. Sinners among you, are you willing to take the initiative to admit your crimes? Countless thunders exploded in the siren's heart, and Zeus seemed to be forcing her to utter the truth. She tried her best to endure it, but suddenly her belly turned upside down, and pieces of sapphires vomited out from her mouth and fell to the ground. Seeing the sad look of the sirens, Zeus was amused. He could easily use his divine power to force the sirens to utter the truth, but that didn't convince the group of mermaids. The lightning flashed, and Zeus' black thunder turned into a black giant sword. Zeus raised the sword with one hand, and the tip of the sword fell on the tip of the Little Mermaid's nose. If no one pleads guilty, then I will cut her down with a sword, take her life, and end this lawsuit. What? The many mermaids were as quiet as death for an instant, and then there was an uproar. Themis' pupils were slightly dilated, and she looked at Zeus, puzzled. Zeus looked majestically at the two of them, and the trembling divine voice resounded through the island. Sinners among you, won't you confess your crimes? The violent divine power shot up from the divine body of Zeus, and the terrifying killing intent instantly filled the earth, flying sand and rocks, surging tides, and the sky dimmed instantly. The terror of death hangs over the island like a sword hanging above the head. The complexions of many mermaids changed drastically, their livers and gallbladders were about to split, and the fishtails knelt down unconsciously, praying to Zeus, begging Zeus for forgiveness. Such a terrifying killing intent made Themis tremble violently in his heart. Suddenly, she saw the god king Cronus. He raised his scythe, and the shadow of death gathered on his side. His divine power is even darker and more violent than Cronus. Without hesitation, Zeus slashed at the sleeping Little Mermaid with the giant sword, bringing a strong wind and shining black thunder. Don't stop! With a shrill roar, the mermaid Chunju rushed forward crazily, blocking Zeus' sword edge, and the violent wind blew her up and landed heavily on the ground. It's me. I admit the crime. The bruised mermaid Chunju raised her head and smiled miserably, her face extremely desperate. Her hands trembled, tears fell like rain, and pearls fell to the ground. I want to snatch this child, her mother is a siren. Please gods punish me, let this child go, let her live. All living beings stared blankly at mermaid Pure Pearl. Themis's heart trembled, and divine power swelled in her body. Zeus wronged her. The balance has weighed the testimony of both sides, and it is clear that the siren is the culprit. Everyone was speechless, and on the island, there was only the howling of the wind. The little mermaid was still sleeping peacefully, and Zeus' giant sword stopped at the last moment. Zeus picked up the little mermaid, walked up to the mermaid Chunju, and handed the baby to her under the gaze of all living beings. My child. My child. Mermaid Chunju tightly hugged the child, wept deeply, and refused to leave again. Exalted gods, sitting on her coral throne, the siren asked coldly. What's the meaning of this? Mermaid Chunju has already admitted her crime. Why do you still want to give her the child? Among the mermaids, there was an uproar. Zeus looked at all living beings, his divine voice was like thunder, and the majesty of the god king who could not be looked at directly resounded through the earth. I pretended to hold the sword, and slashed at the young mermaid. All living beings have seen that the mermaid Chunju disregarded her life, stood in front of the sword, confessed her crime, and only hoped that the child could live. And you, from the beginning to the end, sat on the coral throne, watching with cold eyes. When I held the sword and slashed at the little mermaid, you didn't react at all. When the child is on the edge of the sword and death is coming, which mother will stand by and ignore it? When the child is on the edge of the sword and is about to die, who is the real mother, the mermaid who is willing to sacrifice herself in exchange for the child's survival, or the siren who stands by and does not respond? Zeus pointed to the tearful mermaid Chunju who was holding the little mermaid aside. Although she pleaded guilty, it was not sincere. Her actions proved that she is the real mother of the child. All living beings were silent for a moment, and suddenly, the sound of cheers resounded across the earth. It is indeed an extremely fair trial, praise the gods. And you? Zeus raised his sword and pointed at the siren. Lightning flashes above his lightning greatsword. According to the law, sinner, what kind of punishment should you get? Attempting to steal the children of other living beings is the crime of theft. Falsely claiming a false identity is the crime of deception. Violating the fairness of the law is the crime of disobedience. Themis stepped forward, her source of divine power, silver on the judgment seat. The pages of the book of the law kept turning. Death. Themis' voice was indifferent. I don't agree with your law. The siren's beautiful face twisted a little. Her eyeballs suddenly stood up, turning into blood-red snake eyes. She opened her mouth, stretched out a letter, and her voice became hoarse and terrifying. Snakes fell from her body like rain, and the sapphire she had spit out turned into snakes, crawling all over the earth. I don't agree with the law, nor do I agree with the judgment. I should just swallow that mermaid, and then take the child to my abyss. God. Fight me. The siren raised her hands high, and 100,000 snakes climbed up her arms, entangled with each other, and finally formed a snake sword. The edge of the sword is 100,000 snake heads. The siren raised his sword and pointed at Zeus. The 100,000 snake heads opened their mouths and screamed at the same time. An overbearing beast. Zeus has ascended to the upper god, and has advanced into the blood of the primitive god, and his divine power is extremely powerful. The power of the siren's ancient beasts is no more than the 7th rank of the median god. Facing Zeus, she has no chance of winning. Suddenly, the sky lost its sunlight, and 100,000 dark clouds swept from all directions with roars, gathering in this piece of sky. Lightning roared constantly in the thunderclouds, and when Zeus gave an order, 100,000 bolts of lightning would strike down, and the terrifying divine power pervaded the world. Such repressive and violent divine power is darker than a god king. The sky and the earth have turned into pure black, and the sand and rocks are flying wildly, forcing Themis to retreat step by step. Sure enough, it was this dark thunder force. He saved me just now. Who is he? Themis looked at Zeus, who was floating in the air and surrounded by countless black lightning bolts. Zeus raised his right hand high, and a thunderbolt appeared in his hand. The thunder turned into a spear. Black lightning wrapped around it, and 3 identical phantoms appeared behind Zeus, and they also raised the spears in their hands together. The airflow violently condensed behind Zeus, forming a huge vortex. The world is shaking. Beast. Taste my lightning. Zeus threw a spear, and the spear-bearer's terrifying killing intent and unmatched dark power slashed at the siren fiercely. The expression on the siren's distorted face changed wildly, and the snake sword in her hand felt the approach of death. Suddenly, she could no longer control the poisonous snakes, and 100,000 snakes exploded at the same time, flying in all directions, and fled in all directions. Snake sword. Collapse. I am the daughter of Echidna, the daughter of the snakes. You must not harm me, or my mother's anger will swallow you alive. You must not harm me. Plop. The spear pierced the siren, pinning her hard to the ground. Blue blood flowed violently from the wound, and suddenly, her body exploded, turning into poisonous snakes, fleeing in all directions. Want to run? Zeus' complexion changed, and suddenly, 100,000 thunderclouds rang out in unison. 100,000 bolts of lightning exploded from the sky, striking the island. Boom! The first bolt of lightning directly split the island in half, and then 100,000 bolts of lightning fell, and in an instant, the island was split into debris and powder. The violent sand and rocks covered the sky and finally fell to the earth. Excellent trial. In the violent sand and dust rain, a cold voice sounded. Zeus turned his head. Themis looked at her. In the sand and dust rain, her white clothes were covered with blood, and there was a smile on the corner of her mouth. God, can you tell me your name and where did you come from? I am the youngest son of the god king Cronus. According to the prophecy, I will become the next god king, the god of gods, and the king of kings. My name is Zeus. Zeus, who was surrounded by lightning, looked at Themis in front of him. Drip. Mission accomplished. You have conquered Themis' heart. The reward has been delivered. Zeus felt the majestic divine power vibrate in his thundercloud. The shield of Aegis. Aegis. This is a shield that can withstand the god king. After it is integrated into Medusa's head, it will have the ability to burst out petrified light, making it a well-deserved Aegis. Zeus didn't check the rewards. He looked at the noble and beautiful Themis in front of him, and he realized it. Law and violence are two sides of the same coin. The law makes just decisions, but violence is still needed to enforce them. Themis is the goddess of law and justice, the creator of order. And Zeus, among his countless titles, has an unknown title, the defender of order. Themis delivered justice, and when powerful beings refused to be judged, it was the mighty Zeus who executed it. So Themis was destined to be the wife of Zeus. Be my wife, Themis. Fight with me and overthrow the court of Cronus. Zeus looked at Themis majestically. In my court, you will become my most important god, and will law and justice are spread throughout the world. Yes, my great god king. Themis drew out the silver sword, and she knelt down on one knee with the blade facing her heart. Themis has betrayed the court of Cronus, and wants to spread law and justice. Joining Zeus is the best choice and the only choice. Her heart has been conquered by the power and wisdom of Zeus. Themis held the blade back, and the blade sliced open her palm, and the blood of God dripped down. She looked up, and even though her eyes were covered with blood, Zeus still saw her noble, blue eyes. I am the goddess of law, everything should be in order. The great king of gods, if you want to marry me, you should hold a glorious wedding for me. Zeus nodded. The first wedding between heaven and earth is here. The sky was clear and blue, and the breeze was blowing. In the blue sky, surrounded by white clouds, Zeus' divine power rippled. The ripples rushed to the earth layer by layer and floated on the sea. Countless mermaids and sirens looked up at the bride and groom in the sky. Mermaids played harps and lyres, sirens sang loudly, and the sacred and gentle songs floated on the ocean. Themis pointed to the sky with one hand, and she looked up. Father, after you gave birth to me, you raised my male creature. From then on, you should take my hand and hand me over to Zeus. Themis reached out to the sky, and the sky seemed to be lower. Father, Uranus, you have become the sky, so sky, you hold my hand and hand me over to the man in front of you. The sky fell, and the sky body touched Themis' hand, and the divine power of the primitive god king Uranus was transmitted to Themis' hand. It really is your divine power, Father. After you became the sky, it turns out that you are still watching us. The sky lowered a corner, and the wind lifted Themis' hand and led Themis to Zeus. Zeus took Themis' hand. From then on, in a Western-style wedding, the father needs to hold the daughter's hand and send it to the groom's side, witnessing the transfer of the bride's guardian from the father to the husband. Themis looked at Zeus. Her cold voice trembled. Zeus, are you willing to marry me? Whether you are poor or rich, healthy or sick, love and protect me for the rest of your life? Zeus nodded. He looked at Themis. Themis, are you willing to marry me? Regardless of poverty or wealth, health or disease, respect me and accompany me all your life. Themis nodded. The divine light shone from the sides of the two, and great divine power soared into the sky. Since then, on a Western-style wedding, the bride needs to repeat the vows Zeus and Themis made. The flowers opened out of thin air, and countless flowers bloomed in midair. The white clouds made up Themis' wedding dress. I shall give you my most precious thing, Themis. My most precious thing is my thunder and my ambition. The ambition of Zeus was condensed, and black lightning was wrapped around it. The ambition of Zeus is the hardest thing in the world. It is refined into a brilliant diamond by lightning. Zeus put the diamond on Themis' finger. In the dark, Themis and Zeus heard the sacred words, resounding in their hearts. I testify that the two of you are a legal couple, and your ceremony should be extended to all living beings. When Zeus heard cheers from every corner within 100,000 miles, the birds in the sky, the fish in the sea, and the flowers and plants on the shore celebrated the birth of the first wedding in the world together. The cheers and applause lasted for 7 mornings and evenings. After 7 mornings and evenings, infinite divine power descended from the sky, and this divine power contained joy, promises, vows and responsibilities. Zeus and Themis held the first wedding between heaven and earth, and they were blessed and protected. This divine power is extremely pure. In the baptism of the vast divine power, Themis recovered all the lost divine power, and she returned to the rank of the upper god. This divine power descended for 7 mornings and evenings. After 7 mornings and evenings, the moon gradually rose, and the stars dotted the sky. Then the rainbow filled the sky, and flowers bloomed above the rainbow. The sun rising from the sea in the morning, the fireworks, the mist in the night, and the silver moonlight spreading over the sea. All kinds of wonders in the world are in full bloom in front of the two of them. This magnificent spectacle bloomed for 7 evenings. After 7 evenings, in the sea of flowers, Zeus looked at the cold, noble and beautiful Themis. He stretched out his finger and touched Themis' forehead. You will give birth to a great goddess for me. A powerful lightning current pierced Themis, nearly throwing her off her feet. This current lasted for 7 mornings and evenings. 47 and 28 evenings passed like this, and this was the honeymoon of Themis and Zeus. Themis opened her eyes and felt that a new god was conceived in her body, and this god would become the help of the god king in the future. Zeus looked at the elegant and noble goddess in front of him, who was covered with a blood-colored blindfold. He knew that Themis would bear him powerful children in the future.